Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто воде всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 847 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And Russia is having some very big losses, and it's going down. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And we have gotten absolutely unbelievable news today that a major Russian explosion has occurred on one of the biggest and most active supply routes heading to the city of Bakhmut inside of Pervomaiske, which has completely obliterated the Russian supply line in the area, and not only that, destroyed vital tons of ammunition that was being moved to the war front. We were also able to give major news that the Azov fire at the fuel depot is continuing to burn and has not been able to be put out for 48 hours. It is the longest burning fire of its kind over the course of the entire war. Not only that, but the Kerch Bridge appears to be under jeopardy as Russian forces are continuing to strengthen the bridge's defenses and pray that they hopefully will never have to see the bridge use these defensive measures that they're now installing around it. Not only that, but we got big news in the Vovchansk area that apparently Ukrainian forces are continuing to inflict exceedingly high casualties on the Russian forces, and it does appear that once again the Ukrainians are still holding the frontline momentum and of course making sure that they stay in the advantage. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, we also got more major breaking news that Russian diplomats were actually thrown out of a diplomatic hall in Pyongyang in North Korea, and then we also got to hear that the Russians and North Koreans right after that then signed a defensive pact with each other. Putin is currently, while we're speaking, on his way to the country of Vietnam. Not only that, but we also got news that apparently corruption within the People's Liberation Army of China has apparently reached a fever pitch, with Xi Jinping vowing a brand new anti-corruption campaign on top of the already existing anti-corruption campaign that's occurring inside the country. Not only that, we also got to see a very heated clash today in between Filipino fishing vessels and the Chinese Coast Guard, which currently got into a major melee off of the coast of the Philippines and in the area of the South China Sea, just to cover a little bit of what's going on with the rising tensions in East Asia. But there is absolutely loads of news to cover today, an insane amount, not just from East Asia and Ukraine, but really from every corner of the world. And not only that, we also heard news that I believe it was a Greek-owned and flagged vessel was hit and sank today off of the coast of Yemen from the Houthis. But we're not going to be covering that in tonight's news. I just wanted to bring that up to y'all. If y'all want to go check out our Twitter, I believe that we put a little bit of info about that on the Twitter. I'm not entirely sure. I forgot if I really reposted that or not, or if Matthew did. But moving on into our major breaking news of the night, in the town of Pervomaiske came an interesting little deal. We got to hear that there was a massive explosion that occurred near the city earlier today, and we saw probably one of the biggest mushroom clouds that we have ever seen in Pervomaiske since the beginning of the war. And a lot of people wondered what this was, and it was a complete mystery even to us. We did not know what this explosion was. We really couldn't report on it. We really couldn't say anything about it because we didn't even know what this was. But we found out what it actually turned out to be. It was a KAMAZ supply truck being operated by the Russian Logistics Corps, and from what we understand, what we are watching right here is one of the major highways. As you can see, it is a 4-lane highway that exists heading towards the area of the city of Bakhmut. Let me show you all this road, just to make sure to highlight the importance of what happened here. This is Pervomaiske, and the 4-lane highway that y'all are looking at is right here. And you can also see it right there as well, although it turns into a 2-lane at that point. But all the way from Pervomaiske and straight to the city of Bakhmut, this road remains a 4-lane highway. It is a major supply corridor and one of the few paved roads within this area of Ukraine, meaning that any kind of actions or activities that happen to this road is a serious problem for the Russian Federation and their supplies of their forces that are currently fighting around the area of Chasiv Yar. And it appears that that little incident happened today. Here's the clip. Cool.
Oh, bliat.
So what this is a KAMAZ supply truck carrying dozens of tons of ammunition down the road, and something happened. We believe that it was some kind of engine difficulty, which led to overheating of the engine. The crew pulled over, and then the truck caught on fire with dozens of tons of ammunition on it, and then ended up leading to a critical explosion. What we have heard is that the losses were actually somewhat big because there was a traffic blockage on the other side of the Kamaz that you cannot see on film, and apparently a couple of those vehicles got caught within the blast radius. We heard that maybe 2 supply trucks were caught in the blast radius and suffered serious damage and were completely destroyed. But nevertheless, this is something that you have to note is a severe occurrence for the Russian Federation. Let's watch the clip again and notice that the fireball literally envelops the entire 4-lane highway. Let's watch that again. Right there, you can see that the entire highway has been consumed by this explosion. And not only that, we've also heard that the explosion left a considerable crater in the 2 lanes that were heading westwards, well, actually eastwards, and towards to the area, from what we know, of Luhansk or Donetsk more so. This means that this supply road has suffered a bit of a serious hit, and at least within this one area near Pervomaiske, there's going to be a critical bottleneck at this point because of this explosion. But let's watch the shockwave hit this crew again. Right there, and it was apparently strong enough that this guy flipped the phone in like 1 frame. Right there. But this is something. This is really something, and I gotta say, it is absolutely incredible to see that the Russians are somehow causing their own massive accidents. I cannot put this into perspective how severe of an accident this really is. These kinds of accidents very rarely ever happen in the Western world, in any armed force that is a part of NATO, or any armed force that is within the Western sphere, including countries that are in East Asia. The carrying of ammunition is considered a very fragile operation, considering the volatility of the cargo being carried, and a lot of precautions are usually taken to make sure that ammunition does not end up exploding on the trip, and that also includes doing routine vehicle maintenance checks to make sure that a truck doesn't spontaneously catch on fire and then explode, leading the cargo inside of it to also blow up as well. This kind of stuff is incredibly rarely seen, and this is giving us enough proof to show the Russian Federation is not only cutting corners everywhere they can, they are cutting corners even in carrying ammunition and supplies, which will, like we're seeing right here, pose massive difficulties and challenges for the Russian Federation to make sure that the supplies end up making it to their frontline troops and not blowing up. But moving on from this big news in Pervomaiske, we also got to hear that apparently things are going incredibly badly for the Russian Federation as a whole, not just in the logistics sphere, but also in the armor sphere as well. We were able to get satellite pictures that were taken of Russian military bases, or really Russian store yards near to the area of the Finnish border, and we were able to see that according to satellite footage and data, around 80% of all Russian equipment that was stored in the area around Finland has ended up being removed and relocated, most likely as running operational equipment into the war in Ukraine. And each one of these pictures, we actually have 6 pictures right here. The ones on the left are the pictures from before the war. The pictures on the right are from really right now. I believe these were taken, from what we can tell, just about a half month ago, about 2 weeks ago. And the information was finally amalgamated and put into this picture graph, I guess you could say, right here. We can see that this one right here is actually from what we believe to be the Pskov airfield, and we can actually see that an entire IL-76 strategic airlift wing has been moved out of Pskov into another airbase closer to the front lines in Ukraine, probably to act as emergency surge protection or surge forces for emergency supplies that have to be moved closer to the front lines. We also got to see that in other smaller supply yards, like this one right here, housing hundreds of Russian APCs and main battle tanks, that all of those have disappeared, now being relocated into refurbishment yards and factories to then be converted into usable war material to then be moved forward into the Russian armed forces in Ukraine that are still suffering incredibly high losses on a daily basis. Not only that, but the bottom picture is probably the most interesting one, and I find this to be the funniest because it points out this really small little spot at the top of this camp and shows, look, it has vehicles and now they're gone. But if you look at the picture holistically, and you look at the whole entire picture, you can notice that there's about 20 individual supply yards filled with vehicles in this one base, and every single one of them is empty at this point, at just about a half month ago, 2 weeks ago, meaning that this entire base of hundreds of armored personnel carriers and probably dozens of tanks has been completely depleted to try and fuel the Russian war machine further south. things are just not going well for the Russian Federation, not just in the supply category, but also in really just the entirety of the armed forces. They are running out of equipment, they are running out of supplies, and not only that, they are so desperate to just try and keep the front line stable that they will run trucks until they literally catch on fire and explode, even when they're carrying extremely volatile cargo such as ammunition. And this has led the Russians to be wildly desperate. And while they try and keep a straight poker face on the governmental level, we can clearly tell that the Russians are wildly desperate to try and gain themselves some more support from countries around the world. And they have very few friends to turn to. One of those countries is North Korea. North Korea is a country that doesn't really have a lot of friends itself, and it's also desperate to try and have any kinds of friends that it can lean on or get some help from, at least at a minimum, to help them out and making sure that their people don't starve, as North Korea usually has a problem with stopping their people from starving. The Russian diplomatic teams, as we all saw, Putin finally arrived in Pyongyang yesterday, but the Russian diplomatic teams, as of today, went to work trying to make sure to set the best impression possible to Kim Jong-un and the North Korean government and to make sure to secure Russia more support, and they immediately screwed up by sitting down at the negotiating table, which is a big no-no inside of North Korea. Let me show you all this clip, and I'll explain really quickly what happens beforehand. So, as a rule in North Korea, it is standard that you cannot sit down before Kim Jong-un sits down if you're planning on meeting him. And so what happens is a horseface here and the rest of his diplomatic team actually got to the table and then started sitting down immediately. And so a North Korean aide came in at the end of the clip, made a huge deal about it, and then the camera clips back a second later. They edited out apparently the part where they all got ushered out of the room, and the room was completely empty. So they actually shoved the diplomatic team out of the room because they sat down before Kim Jong-un arrived. So here is the clip. And it's actually hilarious how it all ends, but here's Lavrov, here's Horseface. You see the Russian diplomatic team coming in. And there we have it. There is the first big no-no right there, and Lavrov committed it. Now, that is nice, because Lavrov is usually supposed to be the Russian diplomat, and this is probably one of the most important countries, funnily enough, that Russia is dealing with in the modern day, although economically they're smaller than Haiti somehow. But nevertheless, this is something that Lavrov should know better on, but nevertheless he didn't, and he decided to sit down. And there it is. He broke the big rule, the golden rule. Here comes the rest of the diplomatic team. And we see this guy looking for the baggie of Coke that he left inside of his briefcase right there. We can all see them scuttling around. Some big talks going on, of course. A little bit this split. We have to act like very important people playing. Until the North Korean aide shows up. And look at this guy. I don't know what it was.
The second victim.
Dude, he looked like he hesitated for a second. He was like, am I supposed to do this? He was like, to hell with it. Look at him. Like, watch. He actually thought about it or something. See, like, I don't know if they were doing this deliberately or what, because it looked like he actually thought about whether he should do that or not, and then he sat down anyways. Oh, here we go. So really quickly, y'all can't see this, I'll explain this. Right off screen to the left, this guy is talking to a North Korean aide who just came in and saw the blasphemers sitting in the chairs. Now, this is a big thing. Usually this would put you into the hostile caste of the Songbun system, which is the caste system in North Korea, because this is a massive disgrace to Kim Jong-un, just putting that out there by their own cultural customs and everything that they made. And so they, of course, want to make sure to keep on good terms with the Russians, but they compromised and just kicked everyone out of the room. So here it is. Well, you see them all getting up, man. You look, they're all getting up. And then the camera cuts.
So Lavrov will be going to the gulag. Lavrov will be going to the gulag soon. He'll be doing like 40 years hard labor.
Dude, he'll be planting apple trees or something like that. But dude, look at the camera cut. They just cut from a completely filled, busy room to a completely empty room again because they all got kicked out.
Man, that's crazy. They should have known better, though. Like, they should know that, like, the whole place in North Korea is designed to make Kim look great. And obviously, sitting down before him is not a good idea. It's like, and they're going there to, like, beg for weapons. It's like, you know that Lavrov's going to get probably disciplined for that later by Putin, even.
Oh yeah, dude. Like that, I don't even know what the hell they were thinking, because you know that they got all of this in advance. You know, like the North Koreans relayed everything forward and said, "Hey, for the people who, like, I guess you could say the handlers, make sure that these things are not done by the diplomatic team. Make sure that they never sit down before Kim Jong Un. Make sure they do this. Make sure they do that, because that's all normal for them to pretty much just send a media kit to the Russian diplomatic team and tell them, hey, this is what y'all are going to be doing, and this is what y'all should not be doing. So for them to sit down, it was a complete oversight by the Russian diplomatic team, and they started to fumble pretty badly, but nevertheless, Putin and Kim Jong-un, the greatness of them, they pulled through. And also, we got to see that Putin was really doing something very interesting here. I want to show you all this. This is how things were, and this is how things are going. Now, something that is a very big thing in the Russian world on the propaganda level is that they say that leaning forward on your chair like this shows that you're in a position of weakness. So looking at the top picture in between Lukashenko and Putin, I guess that's why he went from Lukashenko to Lukashenko, is that he leaned on the chair, so then he got the feminine version of his name. But nevertheless, he leaned on the chair, and this is supposed to be showing that Lukashenko feels subordinate or inferior to Putin, and Putin sitting back in his chair, all relaxed and everything, of course, making that Chad-like move, showing that he is the man in charge of the situation. Fast forward to today, and now Putin is the one leaning on the chair, and Kim Jong-un is the one sitting back in the chair. Very interesting change, and it's looking like even Putin's starting to feel a little bit inferior or insubordinate, even to a leader of a country that has less money than Haiti. How in the world can
I'm
you
just saying, but I don't think that Kim Jong Un could lean on the chair like that. I don't think it's possible. I mean, look at Putin sitting in the chair, how like skinny the guy is. He's barely filling the whole chair. Kim Jong Un, like, he doesn't have an inch of like real estate left in that chair, not an inch.
Dude, he's battling to just spread his legs like that, man. Honestly,
Yeah.
like he's fighting the edge of that chair. Dude, honestly, I'm surprised that chair could even hold him, because it looks like it's too small for him. It looks like it's too big for Putin, too small for him. I don't even know how in the hell he would have fit in the chairs that Lukashenko and Putin were sitting in. I mean, he would have literally just destroyed the chair. But beyond that, we got the North Korean Howard Taft over here, and he's just sitting there like he does, he's waiting for another wafer or a Twinkie or something like that. But beyond that, it does look as though Putin is taking a little bit more of a inferior role, at least in this negotiation with North Korea, which is kind of giving us a little bit of an idea of a body language, just if that's anything you can really go off of, that Russia does feel, even on Putin's level, that they are in a somewhat subordinate position to North Korea in this exchange, at least in this one moment, and that they really need North Korean support more than North Korea needs any Russian help, at least off of the current arrangement. But out of this came something very interesting today. The Russians and the North Koreans actually signed a defensive pact, from what we can tell. And I'll quickly get y'all to the statement, and we will read it exactly as it came out today. Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin signed a pact for their countries to aid each other if attacked. That was stated by Bloomberg. Now, this is literally just saying that they signed a defensive pact, meaning that if one gets attacked or the other gets attacked, in a defensive role, both of them will protect each other. If Russia attacks a country, North Korea will not come to defend Russia. And if North Korea attacks a country, Russia will not come to defend North Korea. This is entirely defensive, but nevertheless showing that an agreement has been made in between the Russians and North Koreans that by all metrics would be strengthening their friendship greatly, as they're giving a military commitment to each other to help each other in a time of need. And this, of course, is most likely furthering Russian and North Korean goals of having a more positive exchange of goods in between the two countries. Russia, of course, looking for ammunition from North Korea, and North Korea looking for food from the Russians. There's not really a lot more that they can trade, and a lot of people are saying, well, why aren't they trading money? I mean, obviously, money would probably be something that the North Koreans and Russians would both want. Problem is that North Korean money, by every metric, including a Russian metric, is literally worthless outside of North Korea. So it's not like you can give them food and they pay you for the food, because the money is literally worthless. So with the North Koreans, every single country in the world pretty much has to operate off of a barter system, unless if it's the Chinese. The Chinese are the only country, I believe, that do not operate off of a bartering system with the North Koreans whenever they conduct dealings with them, but that is wildly rare, and that's because the North Koreans actually have a bit of reserve currency of the renminbi, which is the Chinese foreign currency that is specifically used for trading. But moving on from that bit of news in North Korea, and speaking of China a little bit, since we're in the East Asian area, we got to hear that Xi Jinping made a very interesting statement today about the People's Liberation Army and the government's continued actions to try and deal with their armed forces, or what they're kind of seeing as a concerning trend in corruption. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we circle back to this whole defensive pact that the Russians have made with North Korea. And a lot of people are wondering, will the Russians build a larger defense coalition out of an agreement like this? Are they going to start going around to countries like Belarus and maybe even other countries? I don't really know who else will be a part of this defensive pact, but are they going to start trying to build a litany of defensive pacts with countries around them and try and build a Russian version of NATO? Or is this more so just the Russians desperately needing North Korean weapons, so they ended up creating a defensive pact with them out of convenience? A lot of people have been talking about this, and this is a fairly big diplomatic move. No one can deny that, because now North Korea not only has a defensive pact with China, but it also has a defensive pact with the Russian Federation as well. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this? Do they think that this is Russia trying to create their own NATO, or do they think this is more so an act of desperation by the Russians? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so on this question, it looks like about 43% of the audience said Russia does want their own NATO, while 40% said Russia simply needs North Korean weapons, and that's why Putin showed up. And the 12% said it's possible, but not probable, that they're trying to build a larger defense coalition. And on this one, I will say that's definitely possible. However, I am pretty certain that Putin showed up in North Korea simply to procure weaponry and also other aid as well. That's probably the primary reason for him showing up. But I'm sure in the background, in the back of Putin's head, he is thinking about maybe trying to build some type of coalition. Because if you also saw, after he left North Korea today, he went down to Vietnam. I don't recall hearing that being in a press release or anything like that. He just showed up in Vietnam and just went around the whole place. So I think he might be thinking about maybe having that as a backup plan, but I don't think that's the primary reason for him going around to these countries. So I'm kind of with the 12%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, he's probably not looking to try and create a new NATO or a Russian NATO out of this alliance. This is most likely a move of desperation by the Russians to try and get some North Korean weapons. Creating a defensive pact really opens up a massive friendship on a diplomatic level in between two countries, because they pretty much say, if someone tries to shoot you, I'll take a bullet for you. That's really what this means on the diplomatic level. And this will massively open up the trade corridors in between North Korea and Russia for really anything that the North Koreans want and anything that the Russians want, as long as they're willing to trade. And so, with that in mind, I would have to say that this is probably the Russians going, hey, we will sign a defensive pact with y'all. We are really good friends. Y'all can trade all the weapons y'all want with us and get all the food you want in return, but we just need those weapons. So just give us weapons and we'll give y'all everything y'all want. And no one's going to get in the middle of this, because now we have a defensive pact. That's probably what this was, in my opinion. I don't think that the Russians are trying to create a larger version of NATO, because they already have the Collective Security Treaty Organization, also called the CSTO, which you can see right here, which its members are Belarus, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, as well as Armenia, although Armenia officially withdrew from this alliance just last week, meaning that the CSTO is now down one whole member. And so if he wanted to create a Russian NATO, it already exists with the CSTO, and they could have just pulled North Korea into that, but they decided not to. Clearly, because this is more so of a temporary defensive pact, most likely meant to just secure friendship with the North Koreans, at least on a semi-permanent level, and then continue to let the weapons flow from North Korea and the food from Russia flow into North Korea. But with that, I hope I was able to address that incredibly well. And speaking of the news in East Asia, before we start circling back into the area around Ukraine and kind of in the not really international news sphere. Actually, we're pretty much going straight into Ukraine after the East Asian news with China. We actually have had some pretty interesting developments here, and considering that many of y'all always want to hear about what's going on in East Asia, and we usually don't have enough news to make an entire news segment, I decided that we were going to make a small summary today to talk about what's going on. And we were able to hear that Xi Jinping has vowed further crackdowns on the PLA's corruption. Many of y'all will know that the People's Liberation Army has had some issues with corruption in the past, and we have heard just last year, I believe it was, that some Chinese missiles were found out to not have actual propellant inside of them. They were filled with water, and the propellant had been siphoned out by corrupt PLA officials to go sell on the black market for money. which is something that usually would draw a lot of ire from the military circles, especially the Central Military Committee with the CMC in China, which its chairman is Xi Jinping. Usually that would be a bit of an issue, and especially considering that the Chinese have a very strict timetable that they're working off of for national rejuvenation, and that requires them to have a modern informationized force to fight with. Having a large amount of corruption like that is really going against the Chinese central government's ambitions of becoming a premier superpower by 2049. And so Xi Jinping has vowed to boost crackdowns on corruption in the military. And this is wildly interesting because they were already conducting an anti-corruption campaign, really ever since 2018, inside of the People's Liberation Army, and now they're going to be boosting it up another notch. We don't know what this means that they're going to boost the crackdown, because technically there's already been a crackdown since 2018 and it's been ongoing for about 6 years now, but nevertheless they're still going to continue with even further crackdowns to try and root out any corrupt PLA officials. It sounds as though corruption in the People's Liberation Army is starting to be a bit of a serious issue. It may actually be hindering progress for the People's Liberation Army. We do understand that just over the past few years alone, really ever since 2017, which was when the Chinese army went under a massive reform, and that's why we see the Chinese army look so modern today, is because of the reforms they took in 2017. Right after those reforms in 2018, Xi Jinping declared that there was going to be an anti-corruption campaign inside of the People's Liberation Army. And since then, it has been ongoing. And we have heard that apparently they do find criminals fairly occasionally in the PLA, corrupt officers, things like that. And they either sentence them to prison, and some of them, on some rare instances, have actually been subject to execution. And what's really interesting about that is that in China actually executes the highest numbers of prisoners in the world, from what we know, just even on the public numbers. I believe it's like the tens of thousands, I think it's around 10,000 annually. But there are two ways that you can die in China. Well, be executed in China. One is by shooting, and one is by injection. That's actually laid out specifically in the Chinese Communist Party's constitution, which is really interesting, is that they say that there's only two ways that prisoners can be executed in the People's Republic of China, by shooting and by lethal injection. And the lethal injection one's really interesting because they actually have these mobile vans that they will just drive around, and if you're sentenced to death, they'll just pick you up wherever you are, either at the police station or at your house. They'll sit you down in the back of the van, and they'll execute you right there in the back of the van. If you get shot, usually you're taken to some kind of a prison yard where they'll shoot you. Actually, back in the day, interestingly enough, up until 2009, they actually had public executions in China where they would pretty much like rent out a soccer stadium for a day, and they would have quick trials. They would bring everyone up. They would go, y'all have all been found guilty. Y'all will all be executed. And then they move them into a pillory in the middle of the soccer stadium, and then just shoot them in the back of the head. And they would conduct mass executions that way, and it would be public. Like, people from around in the city could come and watch these executions. And the reason why the Chinese government conducted them was, one, to show that the course of law was being followed out and that order was being ensured, and the second one was to instill fear in the public to make sure that they also would not conduct crimes because they could face similar punishment. But they stopped doing that in 2009 because it was considered to be very backwards looking by the Chinese government. It seems like that was a very astute observation of them, and so now they do the executions in private. Either they execute you in a prison yard, or they lethally inject you in the back of some van that's operated by the government. But beyond that, that is how the Chinese deals with their prisoners. But one thing that is not a prisoner of China is Filipino territorial waters, which exist in a pretty expansive part of the South China Sea. Of course, the Chinese believe in the enforcement of the 9-line border that exists in the South China Sea that was made by Mao Zedong, or Mao Zedong, in 1949, which clearly states, or clearly shows on this ambiguously drawn map, that the Chinese control everything in the South China Sea, all the way down to the Spratly Islands, which is a small group of islands down here in the very southern area of the South China Sea. And this has led the Chinese into getting into territorial water disputes with everyone inside the South China Sea. That includes Vietnam, that includes the Philippines, that includes Brunei, funnily enough, as well as Indonesia. It includes literally everybody. Everybody who has territorial waters in the South China Sea has gotten bloody noses from the Chinese Coast Guard. And they've also given bloody noses back to the Chinese Coast Guard, which has caused a massive amount of international tensions, not just with China's neighbors, but also with the United States of America as well, considering that we support Taiwan and the Philippines, which are also involved in these ongoing disputes. We got to see that one of the disputes today in between the Chinese Coast Guard and some Filipino fishing vessels actually ended up going pretty violent. And we were able to get a little bit of footage of that today just to show y'all what some of these territorial water disputes are looking like at the moment. This video was actually published by the Armed Forces of the Philippines, showing what Chinese Coast Guard vessels are doing to Armed Forces of the Philippines vessels that are in the area. So here's the clip.
Man, who is who? Like, whose boat is this they're looking at?
So the boat that we're on in the video is actually the Armed Forces of the Philippines boat, or the AFP boat. What we're looking at across the way on this boat right here is actually the China Coast Guard. And also, I believe the other boat in the background is also a part of the China Coast Guard as well. Moving this back so that way we can make sure that this makes sense instead of just showing the clip with no context. This vessel here is a Chinese Coast Guard vessel. The one we're on is the AFP vessel from the Philippines. And you'll notice that these guys on the Coast Guard vessel for the Chinese actually have clubs and also pole arms as well that they're going to possibly beat the AFP guys with. So check this out again. You can see the club that this guy has right here.
That's like a straight up stick. It's
Yeah,
like a log.
I mean, pretty much just like a billy club or something like that. But they're all screaming at each other. It's just absolute chaos. The Coast Guard, the Chinese Coast Guard, is ramming the Filipino vessel.
Someone's engine is smoking, I think.
I don't know whose it is, though. When you see this guy unlocking his iPhone here. It looks like he's trying to take pictures of what's going on. And that's the end of the clip, but still showing a very tense reaction that is going on right now in the South China Sea. Of course, these things are honestly ongoing all the time. We always see that there is... Hey! Huge shout out to LSA Seattle gang. Welcome in. But we always see that these kinds of things are going on in between the Chinese and the Philippines these days. But of course, just wanted to make sure that y'all have a pretty good update on what this region is currently looking like right now, and kind of laying the stage for further conflicts that may be coming down the line in the future. Although we're doubting that conflicts are really going to happen, the Chinese usually like to try and conduct low-level coercion like we're seeing right here, meaning that they try and use just enough force, not actual force of arms, but just enough force to make countries bend to their will, and then they back off. That's usually the way that the Chinese operate, so we're not believing that this will turn into a full-on war anytime soon. But if the Philippines is ever unrelenting and the Philippines ever fires onto a Chinese Coast Guard vessel, that probably will create a warlike situation in the area of the South China Sea. But for now, things are remaining status quo, but tensions are of course incredibly high. Moving on from this area in East Asia and back into the Russian Federation, we were also able to get some really shocking news from the area of Azov that the fires that were started at the fuel depot, Matthew, are still burning 48 hours later. They have never gone out, and the fuel silo is still on fire.
Now, something I saw Nutters point out yesterday, actually in the comments, is he had noted that the Russians were actually putting water on these fires right here, and there's also oil around the area as well. And from what he's saying, that actually does not help put that fire out. It actually makes it worse by putting water on it.
That's true. Oil fires of any kind, you cannot put water on, because it actually, what it does is, because oil is less dense than water, putting water on it, the water immediately goes under the oil. The oil then bubbles up, allowing more of it to get oxygenated, which actually makes the fire worse and makes it burn even harder. And that's what we've been seeing, at least so far, is that the Russians have not been able to put this fire out. It looks like the fire brigade that was brought to deal with this situation was poorly trained and poorly prepared for this, and they have no clue what they're doing because the fire is still raging on 2 days later. It looks as though it also has completely burned out another silo over here, which we didn't really get to see a lot of during any part of this news. And we can also see the hole that was created by the drone right there in the side of the silo. But moving on from
Also,
that,
I think it's because like many people in the chat are saying, I don't think the Russian fire brigade has the proper foam to put it out, because I think there is, now that I recall it in my head, there is a proper type of foam that sprays out of the hoses that kind of like expands, I think, that will put out these oil fires and also these gas fires. But of course the Russians don't have that because they haven't invested in it. But they're going to keep putting water on it, and it's going to keep going berserk, I guess. That's why they haven't been able to put any of these fires out at any of these oil plants, is because of that.
dude, they just let them roast. I mean, if you can get a fire started at any kind of a Russian oil facility, it will probably just roast until they run out of oil. And it looks like it's doing a considerably larger amount of damage than we ever believed. And the port of Rostov-on-Don is still completely shut down as a result of this. Moving on down into the area of the Kerch Strait, we also got to hear that there were more barges being set up around the bridge. They've got an insane amount of them now. Look at this. There's like 20 of them out there in that one spot. They just keep on piling them up.
Man, that's crazy. So they just got barges and a couple of man pads, and that's it?
That's it. That's all they have protecting this entire bridge.
Seems like they could defeat that pretty easy on the Ukrainian side eventually if they want to take it out. But I heard someone yesterday, I think it was the intel chief in Ukraine, admit that the bridge here is no longer strategically significant, and he made it sound like they've moved on from it, like they're not going to target it. But that could be a psyop to let the Russians feel like they're kind of like getting a free pass on it. But I don't know. But it is true, though. The bridge really isn't strategically significant anymore. It's really just a propaganda target. So I'll be curious to see if Ukraine actually returns to it to hit it.
I'm doubting that they actually will, at least for now. They'll probably wait for it to become a strategic target, but we never know. We'll really just have to wait and see on that, but I'm still thinking they'll probably wait for it to become a strategic target and then hit it during that moment of importance. But meanwhile, we also got to hear that the F-16s will be deployed on Ukrainian soil. At least some of them will, according to the statement from the White House today. And that's really all we have. There's not really a lot more to add to this, and we still don't know when the F-16s are going to arrive in Ukraine, and a lot of people are kind of wondering if they ever will. We were told that they were going to arrive in late May to mid-June, and mid-June and late May has passed, and they're still not in Ukraine from what we know. Now we're being told that they may arrive in early September, so we are not entirely sure where the F-16s are, where they will be. We have heard conflicting statements from Ukrainian sources saying that some of the F-16s will actually be stationed in countries like Poland and then moved across the border whenever the Ukrainians need to reinforce any possible losses. We've then also heard now, as a statement from the White House, that all the F-16s are not going to be in NATO. They're all going to be transferred straight into Ukraine and used on Ukrainian soil. So we don't really know what's going on anymore. The picture's becoming very unclear. F-16s will eventually make it to Ukraine, according to the public statements, but beyond that, we don't have a lot of information to work with here at the moment, and very blurry pictures being made about the delivery of these F-16s to Ukraine. But moving on from that, and now we're moving on into some really interesting location unknowns. We actually got to see a really cool picture today of a low-flying MiG-29. But before we move into that, I want to make sure that we move all the way back across the world really quickly, back to the Chinese, because funnily enough, somehow, while the Chinese are pretty much in their own playing field, on their own side of the world, doing their own thing, the Chinese are actually getting brought up a good bit these days in the Ukraine war, by both sides, with Zelensky saying that he would like China to be a friend, and with other people like Stoltenberg today saying that China should pay for what they're doing. Which is a little interesting. Two completely different statements. NATO appears to see China as an adversary and an enemy so far as the situation in Ukraine is unfolding, which I would have to say is a fairly accurate assertion. Meanwhile, Zelensky is saying that he would actually like to see the Chinese as friends, and they haven't really done anything to piss them off enough. And a lot of people have been saying many different things about the Chinese and what their relation is in the war, and especially with what Stoltenberg has said recently about what should happen to the Chinese because of what's happening with the war in Ukraine. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on Stoltenberg's statement specifically, saying that sanctions are probably going to be coming around soon for China. probably on a U.S. level, maybe even on a European Union level as well, considering that those are the two major members of NATO as a whole. Others are saying that NATO is just yapping as usual, yapping off at the mouth, as one usually does. Other people are saying that NATO is trying to tip Zelensky off about China's bad intentions and that they may not have the best interests in mind for Ukraine, and maybe Zelensky ought to back off of the whole "we want China as a friend" talk. And some people are a little bit unsure and undecided about this, but a lot of people have been throwing in many different opinions and statements about what Stoltenberg said today on the Chinese. And Matthew, what were people thinking in the end? Were they thinking that sanctions were coming? Or were they thinking that NATO was just yapping at the mouth? And what do you think as well about this? And what kind of message do you think it's trying to show?
So the audience, about 58% of them said that sanctions are coming very soon on China, while only 20% said NATO's just yapping as usual, and 11% said NATO is trying to tip off Zelensky to China's bad intentions. And on this one, I will have to say that I'm actually in the minority. I'm with the 11% that said NATO is trying to tip off Zelensky because we've known for a very long time what China is doing. They're sending dual-use goods to Russia. They're trading in these goods, which are being used by Russia to prop up the war effort inside of Ukraine. That's a sneaky way for China to basically send aid to Russia without actually doing it and looking like the bad guy. But if you're really in the know, you know what it's all about. Also, there was an article that came out just today that says that Russia's buying decommissioned machine tools from China specifically to use in their defense plants. So at this point, it's really not disputed that China is helping in some indirect or sort of like semi-direct way to actually fight the war in Ukraine on Russia's behalf. So I think NATO is trying to tip Zelensky off because Zelensky has had some rather friendly statements being made toward China. And while that may be good diplomatically in the short term, in the long term, that is not a good signal to send to the Western allies because obviously China is not Ukraine's friend. And to make it sound like he wants to be friends with them seems a little bit off kilter. So the timing on that statement was very crucial to me. It came literally right after Zelensky made those statements telling China to be a friend. So I'm with the 11%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I would also have to be with the 11% as well. I think that NATO is trying to show that the Chinese do not have the best intentions for Ukraine and are possibly trying to whistleblow what the Chinese really are. And we have to remember that the Chinese are not a nice country. A lot of people keep on mistaking that. I've seen even some people in our comment section, in the live chat, every once in a while saying, oh, the Chinese aren't that bad. Ukraine is smart to make a deal with them. And I always wonder when people say that, is Ukraine smart to make a deal with a country that does not recognize territorial integrity or sovereignty just like the Russians, which Ukraine is currently at war with? I mean, China completely does not recognize the independence of Taiwan. They deny that Taiwan even exists as a country. They say that that's a part of China that appears to be slightly rebellious. That's what they call it. Not only that, the Chinese treat the Uyghurs in Western China incredibly poorly. And I can't really get into that too much because for some reason YouTube doesn't like when people get into that a lot. But everyone knows when I say the name of the group of people who live in the Xinjiang province of China, you all know who I'm talking about. You'll all know what's going on out there in the western area of China. Not only that, the Chinese are incredibly predatory with the way they deal with other countries. They usually look to prey on another country's weakness and draw them in permanently to really Chinese economic subjugation. All of this is something to say the Chinese are not a friendly country. The Chinese are not a country that really anyone would want to be friends with. A country that you wouldn't want to try and have any dealings with whatsoever. And also, a lot of people, and Terrence Kessler said Tibet too, and that is as well. A lot of people don't know that, but the Chinese invaded Tibet and occupied it ever since, I believe it was around the end of the Chinese Civil War. I believe it was maybe in 1955 or 1956. I'm not entirely certain on that one, on the date, but nevertheless, Tibet was an independent country in the middle of Asia that was taken over and occupied by the Chinese. The Communist Chinese after the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949. You cannot make up the kind of rap sheet that the Chinese actually have on a global sphere. And they are not a country that should be played with, and they're not a country that should be trusted. And that is one thing that we've seen that Zelensky has said, and a lot of people have been going, he doesn't mean it like that. He's just trying to make sure that China doesn't join the war on Russia's side. But haven't they already done that? I mean, they haven't provided weapons to the Russians from what we know publicly, but they have provided non-lethal equipment. I mean, we endlessly see the Desert Cross ATVs that the Chinese have provided to the Russians on the battlefields of Ukraine. Is that a country that Ukraine really wants to be friends with? Is a country that is supporting Russia in some form, and their support is showing up on the front lines? Like, yeah, like usually you would usually want to say something like, I don't know about them. Like like I would like them to see our side, but it doesn't really look like they are. Instead of saying, yes, I would like them to be our friends. And it looks like NATO is also recognizing that as well, and is starting to throw out the statements that we were talking about in a very light form days ago, in saying, hey, these people aren't really the best of friends, if y'all know what we mean. They're actively involved in the war in some form, and while they're not providing lethal support, they certainly are providing non-lethal support to the Russian Federation. And so,
I think if Ukraine were to come out and just simply say to the West that we do not align with China whatsoever, and we're aligned completely with the West, and we're never going to be friends with China, that would greatly, in my opinion, help the Western move to give more aid to Ukraine, because the people that are on the fence, that are kind of like, yeah, you may or may not support Ukraine, they're kind of like sort of in the middle. They're probably looking at this and thinking, well, Ukraine looks like they are sort of being friendly to our enemy, so why should we send more aid? But if Ukraine were to say what I just said and say, we're totally against China, we're totally with the United States, that would work to their favor in a big way to get more aid in the future, and also probably, honestly, speed up F-16 deliveries as well, because it would instill confidence that the Ukrainian governments are going to make a good choice and good decisions.
I would completely agree with that. I think it's very important to make sure that the Chinese are contained. I'm a big fan of the idea of Chinese containment. They are a country that is trying to currently grow to rival or beat the United States by 2049. This is actively a country that is our rival specifically. If you're an American viewer, and if you're from any other country that is aligned with America, say Canada, or any country inside of Europe, or Australia, or New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, and also the Philippines, Vietnam to a sense, and also India to a sense currently. If you are in any of those countries and watching this channel right now, China is openly against all of those countries' interests and are working to either undermine them, greatly diminish them in their capabilities, or completely outdo them to the point that we are nothing more than at China's whim in every corner of the world. This is a country that no one should be wanting to be friends with, period. And that should not even be a statement that is mentioned in the public sphere. Because, and also, this is another thing that I gotta say. How would it look? Just continuing on this topic for a little bit longer, and especially about Zelensky saying that he would like China to be Ukraine's friend. How would it look for a possible Western country to align itself with the Communist Chinese, the People's Republic of China, become friends with them, and then have China, of course, beating Filipino sailors like they were today with clubs, openly violating the sovereignty of Vietnam and the Philippines, as well as Brunei and Indonesia in the area of the South China Sea, actively trying to take these small islands, and let me see if I can find them here. Where in the world are these islands? I think these are it. But they're actively trying to seize islands from the Japanese as well. And not only that, they have openly made it quite clear they are looking to undermine Western interests around the world. What kind of a Western country would want to team up with a nation that has made it very clear that they are looking for your demise? That doesn't really make a lot of sense, at least to me. And so I would have to say that probably Stoltenberg is trying to blow the whistle and go, hey, you got to pay attention to what they're really doing. I mean, these people aren't folks you want to be friends with. They're actively supporting the country you're fighting right now. Not with lethal aid, but they are supporting them. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, at least about the Chinese situation. And with that, it's now time for us to move into some location unknowns. And also, really quickly to throw this in the chat, because I saw someone say, it looks like Enforcer's overthinking it. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Only time will tell. But if you agree with me in the chat, let me know. And if you disagree with me in the chat, let me know as well, but explain why you disagree. Don't just be like, you're wrong. Let me know why I'm wrong, because I would like to see y'all's side of things if you disagree with me. But moving on from that, and
I'm telling you, mark my words right now. Like, I'm typically not too dead set on stuff when it comes down to like geopolitics, because it's pretty unpredictable as a whole. But I think what we're saying on China, because I think you and me, Enforcer, are kind of on the same wavelength on this one for once, because usually we have kind of two different viewpoints. I think you're going to see the situation with China go exactly the way we're talking about, unless Zelensky changes course, and he should change course. I think he ultimately will, because he needs the Western aid, but I wish he would go ahead and do that now instead of like dragging this out further before he finally decides to commit to the West, because I think that's hurting Ukraine's aid getting to their country, because if you'll notice, the F-16s are being dragged out. It's on purpose, in my opinion. They were supposed to be there already right now, but now all of a sudden there's more delays in it. And I think those delays are intentional because the West is sort of getting cold feet, thinking, are we about to give all these F-16 jets to Ukraine for them to later maybe turn on us? That's what they're thinking. And Zelensky needs to do his best and his damnedest to let the West know that they are completely Western and will always stay Western, at least for now, to try to smooth things over to go ahead and get the aid they need.
I would agree with that. And also, I saw someone in the chat say, I disagree with your statement. If you condemn the Chinese, and I'm not saying condemn them, I'm just saying have no dealings with them, especially on Ukraine's level, considering that they really don't have any negotiating chips to work with. And I'll break that down here really quickly as well, because someone's going to say, well, they have the grain, but the grain is not a negotiating chip, and I'll explain why in a second. But with the Chinese, you don't have to condemn them. You just have to be in like a middle ground. Just say nothing about them, and nothing will happen. I mean, the Chinese are at best, in some cases, reactionary. And if you did condemn them, maybe they would start to support lethal aid to the Russians, although that would be really off color for what the Chinese usually do, to be quite honest, on a diplomatic level. But another thing, getting onto the Ukrainian grain, because someone brought it up, and this is a very important point, Ukrainian grain is not a negotiating chip with the Chinese, because we have to remember the economic disparity in between the People's Republic of China and that of Ukraine. Ukraine is a country that economically falls a pretty decent bit farther down the list than the Chinese are. They are actually a pretty small economy. And let me show you all this really quickly. Ukraine GDP, and we're going to go with the pre-war GDP figure. Ukraine has a GDP pre-war in 2022, well, actually 2021, of 200 billion US dollars annually. That is not a lot. And let me see if I can get y'all a comparison here with the Chinese GDP, because it's all about spending power at the end of the day. And while the Ukrainians have a nice whopping $200 billion GDP, the Chinese have a nice smooth $18 trillion GDP. Actually, it was 17.82 in 2021, which is the year that we're going with the Ukrainians off of. And so you can see that the spending power is considerably different. And that will determine who sells to what. And that's also why, to put this into a historical lens, China ever got an aircraft carrier. And that's something that a lot of people don't know about. China's first aircraft carrier was actually not built by the Chinese. It was actually sold to them by Ukraine, because Ukraine was desperate for money. Well, kind of like they are a little bit right now, to be quite honest, because a war will take a toll on a country economically. It of course, is about to make the Russians collapse by the end of this year, but Ukraine, being real with everyone, is not really that far off from the Russians right now. Western support keeps them above water, but you know, if there was no Western economic support, the Ukrainian economy would start to sink just like the Russian one is over time. But with the Ukrainians back in the day, back in the mid to late 90s, the government was looking to make some kind of money to float the country. And so they ended up selling the only aircraft carrier hull they had to the Chinese, and then the Chinese fitted it out and made it into their first aircraft carrier ever. That's why it's literally a carbon copy of the Admiral Kuznetsov, because it's the sister ship of the Kuznetsov. The Ukrainians are still kind of in the same economic position today that they were in then, especially compared to where the Chinese are. The Chinese have money. And the Chinese can go buy grain from other countries if they needed to. It's exactly the same way that Europe went and bought natural gas from other sources when cheap natural gas from Russia was no longer an option. They went, okay, well, we're not getting Russian natural gas, which was the cheapest option, but that doesn't matter because we got plenty of money. We can go piss on the Russians' heads with the amount of money we got. We'll just go buy natural gas from somewhere else. And that's exactly what Europe did, and it really didn't have an impact on anyone anywhere for that point. And that's the exact same thing that China could do with Ukraine. Ukraine can't go, oh, you know, we're going to stop the grain shipments to China, you know, if you don't stop supporting the Russians. Because the Chinese would go, oh, okay, screw you. And then they'll just go buy the grain from another country that produces a large amount of grain. It's not like they're out of options. China has an unlimited amount of money compared to the Ukrainians. And so on a bargaining position, the Ukrainians dealing with the Chinese are always going to be at the disadvantage. And so there's no actual trump card that they can pull to go, aha, we got the Chinese by the ropes. They're never going to be able to do that. The Chinese are always going to have them by the ropes. Because in reality, just like I was saying, just like Europe did with Russia, China is in the position to actually go to Ukraine, you know what, we don't really like what's going on. We're just going to stop buying your grain. And we're going to go buy it from somewhere else. And they will. And then China has nowhere to sell their grain. So they are in a position where they cannot leverage the grain deal. So as a whole, if the Chinese and the Ukrainians deal with each other, the Ukrainians are going to be on the short end of the stick every single time. And that's why I'm saying it's better for the Chinese, well, it's better for the Ukrainians not to try and reach out to the Chinese and have a major amount of dealings with them or try and create a friendship, because there's nothing positive to come out of it at all. And that's what I keep on trying to reinforce. And let's see here. Seeing a lot of people, let's see. Why the Ukrainian voice changed, but not.
Someone mentioned the petrodollar a minute ago too.
Oh my God! Not the petrodollar.
The petroleum dollar. Oh,
dude, oh my God, dude. Oh, the petrodollar is a made-up term, y'all. Like, I don't know why people act like the petrodollar is some crazy thing. It's just U.S. dollars that are involved in the exchange of oil with Middle Eastern countries. The petrodollar is a fictitious myth. It has no impact on the U.S. economy, because guess what? The dollar didn't really gain a lot of value when it started to be called a petrodollar, and it hasn't really lost a lot of value since we stopped using it as the petrodollar, I believe, a few weeks ago. So there's no the petrodollar has no impact on nothing. It's a literal mythical term meant to describe U.S. dollars that are involved in the oil business. That's it. Like, it has no impact on nothing. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can about Chinese-Ukrainian relationships, or Chinese-Ukrainian relations, and explain why I believe it's something that should be cautiously looked at and the Ukrainians should completely avoid as far as Western interests are concerned. But with that, I hope we addressed that incredibly well. And with that, it is now time for us to move on into the location unknowns. But before we do that, I'm understanding that some people have thrown in some questions, Matthew. Some very interesting questions. And what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we've got some very interesting questions as well. And also, by the way, I don't know how many people on Twitter that run OSINT channels watch our channel, but it always happens that every time we get into a discussion, like, for example, the poll we had earlier about whether or not Russia is going to form a larger defensive alliance, there's always people like weighing in on Twitter, like on the same conversation, but they don't mention us directly, and the timing is always really weird on it. I see someone on Twitter here, I won't mention their name out loud, because I'm not sure if they're referring to us or not. They said that the new Axis alliance has now arisen in the world. They're talking about the North Korea and Russia treaty, and they're saying that it's probably imminent between China and Iran and also Russia as well to sign a similar agreement. And I saw some people in the chat saying earlier that it was only an agreement to provide aid if one of the countries were attacked. It's not that, actually. It actually says right here in Article 4 of the new treaty that's been signed that they will provide military and other assistance without delay by all means at their disposal. So it is indeed a defensive and also an aid sort of agreement here. So they'll actually provide military force if one is attacked. So it is possible, considering the language of that there might be, maybe in the future, some type of new alliance trying to be formed between Russia and also these other countries as well. The only one I have some doubt about, though, is China, because China has gone through, like we mentioned, pretty good effort to try to keep themselves directly out of it, but sort of indirectly not out of it. So I'm not sure about that. But real quick, Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say it's a defensive pact like any other. It's not really an axis of evil being formed, because the CSTO, I think, would be a better argument for an axis of evil than anything. It's really just an extenuation of Russian desperation for equipment. I would say there's not really anything where you could, like, read the tea leaves and get, like, the big picture of the world going on here. This is more of like a small end dealing, just trying to secure weapons in the future for the Russians, at least in my opinion.
Now, real quick, the CSTO, that's actually an economic alliance, isn't it? That's not really a defensive one.
No, that's purely a military alliance. It's the Collective Security Treaty Organization. It's in the name.
Let's see. Yeah, you're correct. I think I was getting confused with a different one, but you're right. Which countries are in that again?
Let's see.
Wait a minute, that's what they call the BRICS, or is that something else?
The CSTO and BRICS are different. But the CSTO is comprised of Russia, which is its key member, a lot like the U.S. is the key member of NATO. Then you have Belarus. Then you have formerly Armenia. Armenia withdrew, so they're not involved anymore. Then you have Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And that's it. Those are all the members of the CSTO. It's just those five. Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Belarus. That's it.
Maybe so, but really, to be honest, after seeing the countries that are actually included in the CSTO, and now knowing it is a purely defensive alliance, those countries are kind of, like, no offense, kind of like
Insignificant.
Kiwi countries, a little bit. When we're talking about North Korea, North Korea is not exactly a powerhouse, but I think they're a little less peewee than some of these countries here when it comes to weapons, at least. Not the economic situation as a whole, but just weaponry. And also, for example, Iran, China, obviously a massive one if they were to get into an agreement with them. But I don't know. I think the CSTO might be a pretty small one compared to what the new alliance could be if Russia actually pursues it.
Possibly so. I just don't really see a lot coming out of a North Korean Russian relationship. I just don't. I cannot, because North Korea is such a weak country. I mean, it really is, because they have no economic base. They have no industrial base to speak of either. Most of it's involved in war production. They have no basis to speak of where they can go, okay, we're doing well in this one metric. Like with, like, say, Kazakhstan, at least with them, they can go, okay, we're doing really well in the oil base. Like, we've built a base there. It's incredibly strong. It's how our country makes money. We're doing well. With North Korea, there's nothing. I mean, it's like they are like the hustlers of the international world. Like, they just find something and try and run with it for a bit. So their big things right now is dealing in arms to the black market and coal trading with China, and that's it. Like, that's all they do. And then they build up a whole bunch of arms and weapons for themselves under the crazy mindset that one day they'll invade and take over South Korea, which will probably never happen either. And so I just don't really see a lot coming out of them. And also considering that they're famished and they don't even have a good food supply, that is really a big thing, because it's like, how in the world will they fight a war when they don't even really have any food? Because they won't be able to ration. I mean, like rationing would be non-existent. All the food would be going to the army. There would be no food left in North Korea for the citizenry, so it would pretty much just kickstart a massive famine on its own, trying to start any kind of a conflict where the army has to move out of Korea, or the army has to really function at all.
Well, you see, also included in the defensive pact between Russia and North Korea is there's a provision in there that says that if they go to war and all of a sudden there is a famine in North Korea, then Russia will immediately ship an emergency supply of pig snout in a can to the civilians to make sure that they're okay.
Dude, I thought you were serious. I was like, wait a minute, they actually included a clause for famine? I was like, dude, no way. I was like,
they should have,
everything.
though. That'd been smart.
Dude, it would have been smart. I'm not lying. That would have been smart, but I don't think anything major is going to be coming out of this. Now, if let's say, because we all know the geography of things right now in East Asia and really in Asia as a whole. If China was to start pulling in people, like, for example, China was to ally itself with Russia and then North Korea and then Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan, because the Chinese are actually trying to build up some relations with the Afghans, and also a couple of other countries. Now, that would be concerning. That would be a direct competitor to NATO. In fact, I would say it wouldn't even be a direct competitor to NATO. It would pretty much be unparalleled, especially in its region in the world, because the United States, or really the Western sphere, would have nothing to compete with that kind of a powerhouse in East Asia. Sure, we would have NATO, but NATO is a Europe-centric organization. We don't have any Asia-centric security alliance in this area of the world. So they actually would dominate if they did create some kind of a security alliance like that. But it will, at least in East Asia. In Europe, of course, it would still be heavily in favor of the Western world, but in East Asia, that may be a bit concerning, and that may mean that we would have to start massively building up a security organization of our own in East Asia, and also moving a lot more U.S. armed forces into the area as well to offset the change in the balance of power in this region. But with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can. Really, honestly, what's weird, Matthew, about the Ukraine war is that it's starting to turn really into an entire international affair. And whether we wanted to or not, we're starting to talk about things going on in Asia because they're actually impacting what's going on in Ukraine, which is a really wild thing. It's actually affecting the entire world at the moment.
Yeah, I like that too, because I always like to sort of like focus. My area of focus is also, I like Ukraine, obviously. I'm rooting for Ukraine, but I've studied more of the China region a little bit closer. So to me, it's a little bit more fascinating down there. So to see the way that they're interacting with other countries is really kind of interesting to me. So it's good to know.
And also, Rebel Football, you are correct. We do have the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. And let me go pull that up really quickly. CETO. Let's see here. Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. There we go. And it was dissolved, however, in 1977. So that's why I said we had no alliance like that. But here was its members, if anyone's interested. there were the members, but it didn't include Japan and South Korea. I don't think we have at the moment, and I may be speaking from ignorance here because I don't know a lot about U.S. Treaty building or U.S. existent treaties within the area. I know that we have defensive pacts with South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and so on, but I do not think we have a collective security organization amongst them. We just have individual treaties with each, but we have not created a NATO-like organization in this area of the world like we have in Europe, because the threat never really existed until the modern day to have something like that. You've got to remember, we were facing down the Soviet Union in the Cold War in Europe. And so that was the major concern, was making sure that we would be able to face them down in Europe. But up until the past 2 decades, China was an insignificant country economically and militarily, so there was no reason to actually create any kind of a major military alliance to counter the Chinese in this area, like we did in Europe. And that's why I think nothing like that really does exist around here. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong, and I have a feeling that I probably am wrong. We probably have some kind of a basic framework defensive organization in East Asia that I probably just don't know of by name. But I feel like there probably is one that does exist. Just correct me if I'm wrong, though. So, you know that. Put it in the chat. If I'm wrong, let me know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can with what's going on over here. But with that, we do have to make sure to get to a couple of questions. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our first super chat of the night goes to Radical of an Integer Information Media Activity, who puts in a $26 donation, and huge shout out to Radical for that very generous support. He said Tango Whiskey Echo November Tango Yankee Sierra India X-Ray, which stands for 26, which is the exact amount of money that he put in the super chat. And huge shout out Radical for you supporting our work as always. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge shout out to Radical, who threw in an incredible bit of support and is helping this channel to keep on running. You're helping this thing to be ad-free, sponsor-free, and supported by the viewers like you yourself, Radical of an Integer. And I gotta thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so I gotta thank you so much once again for throwing in the phonetics. I like to see them. And also, I gotta thank you once again for being a viewer of this channel, have been for an incredibly long time, and helping to support this channel and helping it to keep on rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're about to be moving on to the next one. Before we do, Barry Badgernoth is right. George Skrispaniak, or whatever the last name is. You have to tell me why I'm wrong. Great. Good to know I'm wrong, but why? You have to explain that. Or otherwise, it's just saying I'm wrong for the hell of it, which anyone could do. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. You have to actually include the reason why I'm wrong in the form, otherwise the form is invalid. But moving on from that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Marion Deemert, who's also a longtime channel legend and puts in a $20 donation. And I thank you, Marion, very much for that support. Excuse me. And sadly, no comment to address on this one. But Marion's always supporting the channel, and we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemert, and helping this channel to keep on running. Yeah, folks like you help to make this channel possible, help us to make it a reality, and I got to thank you so much for that. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support always means a lot and always helps us to keep this channel running, and so I thank you massively for being an old guard, a channel legend, and being here with us tonight and making sure that the flag of the Lee Spring Army can continue to fly high around the entirety of the world, and of course to make sure that the Enforcer channel can continue to cover the news 7 days a week, which is actually crazy when you think about it. I think we're one of the few news channels that isn't a mainstream news channel on YouTube that actually runs 7 days a week, but we are entirely honored to be in that position and get to do that for all of y'all. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Marion Deemer. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the Ukraine war news on the actual front lines.
All right, and this one goes to Sarah A., who puts in a $10 donation and does not leave a comment, but huge shout out to Sarah for that support as well. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge shout out to you, Sarah, and thank you so much once again for the support and being a longtime legend of the channel, helping us to keep this thing running. If it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this channel a reality. And I say that time and time again after every single super chat, but it's true for each and every one of y'all who support this channel with a super chat, whether it be $1, whether it be $500, which is actually the cap that a super chat can reach. y'all are the ones who actually make this channel a possibility where we can do this every single day. And I got to thank you greatly, Sarah A., for being one of those people tonight and supporting this channel and helping it to be possible, because it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here live on air. And that's why we always make sure to give each and every super chatter a huge shout out, because while right now there are 8.5 thousand people here and 47,000 people have watched this stream so far, there still is a very small amount of super chatters that actually make this channel possible. Sadly, living ain't free. We, of course, have to pay rent. We have to do all kinds of stuff in the background to make sure that we can survive, and none of it is free at all. We wish it was, but sadly, it is not. And so we do this as a job, and the only people who actually make sure that we can do this as a job and support ourselves and making a living off of this thing is folks like you, Sarah A., and everyone else who supported the channel tonight. And that's why we always give a huge shout out, call y'all out by name for everyone to hear, because y'all are the ones who make this channel a reality for thousands of people every single day. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from this question segment and on into the location unknowns, where we actually got to see a low-flying Ukrainian MiG-29 today that was outfitted with several R-73s, which we can see right there, and a couple of R-27ERs, which are the radar-guided form of the R-27 missile. This one is also in the Ukrainian Air Force aerobatic livery, which is very interesting. This is one of the Air Force display MiGs that was then pulled from Air Force display and now used in a combat role in the present day. But that's pretty cool to see. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see an unfortunate hit that the Russians were able to get on a Ukrainian BMP-1 today, which did lead to an ammo detonation, which was filmed at very close range. And here's the clip.
Oh. Блядь.
Sadly, that BMP is done for. But luckily, no Ukrainians were harmed or killed in the making of this video.
Я ебу, я пішов отсюда, блядь. Ну його, такі шутки нахуй.
And that's the end of that clip. And we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the Russian casualty report, because it was absolutely insane today.
Oh dear, this is terrible for the Russians. Absolutely terrible. I'm seeing 7 Bobcats down for the count. It's not getting back up. They're down. They're out. And also, wow, 47 vehicles. That's crazy as well. Man, these losses are getting wild. I'm telling you what.
Dude, they be wildin', and 1,130 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, which is, of course, staying within the average these days, and it's actually insane to see that that's the average nowadays. But 12 armored personnel carriers were also destroyed as well, along with 47 supply trucks, 3 of them being in the area of Pervomaiske, 10 main battle tanks, 48 artillery pieces, 34 drones, 4 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 7 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, the day has been very good for the Ukrainians, and it does appear that the defensive efforts are once again producing fairly high loss numbers, at least from what we can tell based off of the reports. Moving on from that and into the Vovchansk area, we did get to see the reports were backed up with a little bit of video evidence, as we got to see that a T-80 main battle tank of the Russian Federation was smoked today, with Chad music playing in the background. And we can see the drone flying in, getting ready to hit that T-80, and wait a minute, hang on, sorry, I got that out of key. Any second now. There we go, and it hit dead on. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful.
I'll admit that little fellow was sneaky. I really didn't see it there very much.
Man, I didn't see it much either, but they saw it, and that's all that mattered. And they hit it right on the top of the turret, and the ammo immediately started cooking. Dude, call Colonel Sanders, because they be creating pressure cookers out here. And here comes another one. Ooh.
Oh. Had to make sure he was down. The Ukrainians are really clearing the forest, I see. Like, all the shrubbery that was in front of it's gone.
Man, they clearing it out, man. They be like a weed whacker around here. They just wiping the stuff out. And here comes another drone. Dude, they just keep on hitting this thing. I mean, it's already burned out. It looks like they're just trying to make sure that it's completely destroyed. Got to give them an E for effort on that one. And here comes another one. And it's going right down. It looks like it's aiming for the gun breach. Oh my lord! Okay, well, they actually got a pretty
Whoa.
solid hit on that one. It looks like the tank is now gone. It's not like burned or crispy or anything. This thing is well done. Congratulations, even.
It's burned. It's burned.
You're cooking in a burnt pan. You. Oh man, dude, I couldn't do the rest of it. I was like, well, that wouldn't be good for show. But dude,
It's raw. It's freaking raw.
dude, I wish that we could cuss a little bit. You know, it's like, well, a little bit more, because that would be funny to do the whole like Gordon Ramsay thing. You know, you cooking in a burnt pan. You know, like that whole deal.
Yeah.
That would be funny to do on air, but sadly, we want to make sure to keep it at least PG-13. But here's the clip. You know, we show war footage and then we keep it PG-13. It's kind of weird how we do that, but we do it, and we do it with class. But we can see the drone scooting around this already damaged T-72B3 that has been knocked out on the front lines. We can see the drone just kind of hovering around, doing its thing. Oh, and it's getting close to that gunner's hatch. And, you know, right in the hatch. You can see the RPG warhead right there. Did it blow up, though?
Oh.
Blow up! Come on. Okay, so there it is again. And it looks like it climbed down into the turret. And where's our critical detonation? Hopefully soon.
They just sat in there in horror for a good solid like the 10 or 15 seconds. Oh,
Suck
my God.
it,
That is an
Blad.
inferno.
You know that one guy, man? You remember him?
Yes. You're
Yes.
cooking in a burnt pan. Your pan's burning.
You're cooking in a burnt pan, you effing... like, oh, man. Oh, dude, that thing was cooking up, man. I mean, like, you can't beat that kind of cooking.
Damn, that's some crazy fire. Can you imagine how hot it is inside that tank?
Dude, I would bet you it's hotter than room temperature.
It's hot as hell.
Man, maybe even hotter. But moving on from that and on into our next clip near to the area of Vovchansk, we also got to see the trenches of Kharkiv, as according to the 3rd Brigade. Here's the clip. We got that Go-Go Gadget music playing right here. Anyone watch Go-Go Gadget as a kid? I never did, but I've heard the music before. Anyways, we can see the Ukrainians moving on around. We can see a little fire over there. And boy, does that remind me of the holiday season. Are y'all ready for the holiday season? I mean, they already got Christmas decorations out in some of the stores, and it's the middle of summer. They getting y'all ready.
Ho, ho, ho.
Man. The jokes that could be made, but will not be made. We see them firing at the Russians, continuing to move around. See them continuing to move forward through the tree line. Also, this guy actually has an AK-12, which is really neat. Oh, and he flung it, chucked it. Oh! See him moving down the trench some more. See him crawling forward, hanging out in the debris of the trench. See the camera looking at a nice piece of driftwood. Funny thing is that there's nowhere for this wood to drift in this area of the country. There's like no water here. That was a bit of an exaggeration. There are some rivers, but there's not really any major water here. And there goes a grenade. He's now getting back down on the ground. We hear the grenade explode. We now see him getting up and moving forward. You see him sitting here, waiting again. And then when you see him laying down that heat, I mean, he's got the heater out and everything, Matt. He's making sure they stay warm this summer season.
For the heating season, like Zelensky said.
I still don't know what that statement meant. Like, like being totally honest, what the hell's the heating season? You know what I mean? But we see him still firing. Oh, and we see a little explosion right there.
I can attest to those gloves he's wearing, though. Those are very good quality. And it looks like they're holding up very well.
Dude, he's got those high-quality gardening gloves right here. And we see them taking a break right here in this part of the trench. What kind of a dust cover does he have on that AK, though? Because, like, the little area of the back recoil spring was, like, receded a little bit. We can see someone here taking a nap. We can see a couple of people taking naps. And we're going to be ending the footage there. But, of course, showing what the 3rd Brigade's doing in the area. Some people are a little bit sleepy, though, and like to sleep on the job. And that just is what it is. We can't help that. But moving on from that and into the area of northern Ukraine, we did get to see that the 44th Brigade was hitting some Russians with some cluster rounds. And we can see them already hitting the Russians here. We can actually see the Russians have set up defensive positions. Oh. Dude, that covered up my stutter perfectly, man, when you did that. I was like, and he went, dang.
Man, they sent in like a freaking, Trident missile on that one person right there.
Man, they're making sure to get him. Oh, and they're on the run now. It looks like they've been spooked. And they're going to keep getting hit. We see fires continuing to brew on the Russian positions. I mean, it's toasty out there. My goodness. Stay warm, folks. And that's the end of the clip, but the 44th Brigade was doing some work. But anyways, moving on from that and further down the line and into the area of the Kremena Forest, we also got to see another Russian tank being destroyed in this area today. There they go. As an entire column, or as they call it, a kolumna. Look, an old Soviet kolumna. Fred, what are you talking about? They were clearly sleeping. They were sleeping. Come on. Listen, man, like frontline combat, like Matthew knows, it's tiring work. And sometimes you just gotta take a nap. You gotta take one of those tactical naps. And that's what they were doing. Tactical naps. It's a common practice. They like
to party and you gotta tell them no.
Exactly.
Because you gotta take a nap.
They like to party, you gotta take a nap. And we can see them hitting one of the Russian vehicles, which is now burning alive. Well, not burning alive, it's an inanimate object. But that's the end of the clip. And they got that thing. It'd be roasting. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip, a little bit further down the lines, and into the area of Klishkivka, where we got to see that a Lancet drone was taken out by a Ukrainian FPV. Man, we're going to be muting that, but we can see the FPV drone here at an incredibly high altitude. We can actually see a Lancet up there. I don't know how they spotted that on the camera, but they still spotted it. It's apparently coming the way of the FPV drone, and it is. We can actually see it right there, and from what we can tell, they took it out. They remote detonated the thing or something near to the Lancet and ended up destroying it. At least that's what we've been told. And we can see the remains of the Lancet down here on the ground, showing that they actually did manage to shoot the thing down, which is pretty wild. But moving on from that, huge credit to the 93rd Brigade, and moving a little bit further on down the line and towards Pisky, we got to see that the 59th Brigade was hitting the Russians down here excessively hard.
Oh.
And we can see them now hitting another Russian position again. Ooh!
Bliat.
Oh! And they got a couple of other guys. Oh, my lord! They double tapped them. Oh, my goodness. Oh, and we can see a runner. We got a runner here. Like the FPV drone, sadly, does not allow for any sort of fortune. Good fortune. Yep, it looks like he will not be running anymore. And we can now see another FPV drone coming in and getting another Russian. And we can see another one. Actually, it went for the other guy in the group because he was not paying as much attention. And, ooh, bad luck for him. Bad luck for little Ivan there. And we can now see another FPV drone coming in. Yes. I see you know your drones well. Good one. Ooh, double tap. Another double tap. They love double taps, especially this week. We see him taking a nap right there. And moving on from that, we can then see another FPV drone finding more Russians. And we can see them just continuing to knock the Russians out. We can actually see them going for a comms tower here, and we can see a Russian trying to run around from the FPV drone, but sadly, it will not work. Boop. And it looks like he's not going to be having a fun day. And we can see another couple. Another one. Oh! That one did a little twirly bird. And we can see another one. Man, remember when we used to play Twirly Bird with Mr. Corgi?
Oh, yeah. He's like Twirly Bird.
Man, yeah, if y'all don't know what we're talking about, what we used to do is that Mr. Corgi would be laying on the ground, and we would come up to him, and we would get our finger, and we would put it like maybe a foot above his head, you know, which is pretty high for a Corgi because they're only like 2 feet long. And you would spin it around, and you go, and then you would poke him. Well, really, it was like a poke pet kind of thing, kind of mixed together, and you yell Twirly Bird at him, and he got to where he loved that game. Mr. Corgi freaking loved Twirly Bird, but then for some reason we just eventually stopped doing it. I think because Mr. Corgi got tired of Twirly Bird, but he loved it for a good bit. Anyways, moving on down to the area of Novomikhailivka, we got to see that a Lancet drone tried to hit a Panzerhaubitze 2000 and ended up missing it completely. Here's the clip, and it shows the Panzerhaubitze getting a near miss. We see it right there. Look, there's the gun of the Panzerhaubitze 2000. An absolutely amazing SPG made by the Germans. And we can see it right there again. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at that. And they're about to blow it up. Well, they're going to miss. But anyways, we can see it backing up into the trees. They're in the trees. And the Lance is about to come in right here. And it blows up in the tree, missing the Panzerhaubitze completely. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But still, nice to see that they missed that Panzerhaubitze, and it lived to see another day. But many people have been talking about NATO leaders debating whether to commit to join Ukraine or letting Ukraine join NATO at the next summit. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. Not their thoughts, but their thoughts. Because I totally mispronounced that right there. But what are people saying about that, Matthew? Do they think that Ukraine should commit, or NATO should commit to Ukraine now 100%? Or should they wait before committing? What are people thinking, Matthew?
So a whopping 52% of the audience said that NATO should commit right now to allowing Ukraine into the NATO alliance after the war is over, 100%. And it looks like 30% of the audience said NATO should wait before committing, and 11% said it really doesn't really matter, to be perfectly honest, and the timing is not important. But on this one, I would honestly be with the 30%. I think NATO should wait before committing because there can be behind closed door agreements that Ukraine will be put into NATO after the war's over. And that's the only time that Ukraine can be put into NATO. They can't go in during an active conflict. So joining during the war is ruled out by NATO charter. However, if they're allowed into NATO before the war's over, or even like if they're committed to it right now and then the war ends, all that does is give Russia more ammunition to say, we need to unite as the Russian people because now NATO is right at our doorstep, and that's going to fuel their propaganda narrative that Russia's actually not fighting Ukraine, they're actually fighting NATO. So committing now really does nothing to try to help Ukraine in any way because they're already being treated as a de facto NATO member by getting all these basically hundreds of billions of dollars worth of aid. That's about as good as NATO membership if you ask me. So I'm with the 30%. They should probably wait before committing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that they should probably wait before committing as well. It's we just really need to see how things are going to pan out. before they join NATO. And also, it wouldn't be good for them to join NATO while there is an active war going on, because the whole thing that the West has been trying to do has been avoiding a all-out war with the Russians, and that would kind of be making it an inevitable certainty, to be honest, at this point. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news, where we got to see the 71st Jaegers at the front. Just a couple of pictures of some of the soldiers of the 71st Jaegers. Really neat to see. And moving on from that and further down the line, we also got to see that the Zala drone was destroyed today by Ukrainian forces as well in the eastern direction. We're going to be muting that Euro pop music. Look at that. And we can see the drone right down there. We can see it, actually. There it is. It's right there. You can see it right before your very eyes. Don't let it disappear. Don't blink. It will go away. And we can see them coming down upon the Zala. Man, they're coming down like as a warbird, man. They're doing a dogfighting maneuver right here. Or something like that. But anyways, we can see them coming down on the Zala and an impact. A successful impact. Nice to see. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we then got to see that the Ukrainians destroyed a Russian BMP-2 near to Verbovoye, or Verbovi, as we call it here on this channel. Chad music ensues. But there is our destroyed BMP-2. Oh my lord! Okay, I didn't expect that. So it looks like it was a critical detonation. A word many of y'all have heard many times throughout the war, but I think that really does count. Dang. And we can see the BMP is toasting now quite nicely. Oh, dang, look at that. Oh, dang. It's just beautiful. It's incredible, even.
Whoa.
Whoa. Super wow. But it's just continuing to burn. I mean, it's BMP on fire. You know, what can we say?
Alliance. I don't even know what that means. It just literally popped and said alliance.
Me either. But, you ever invested in crypto? But anyways, moving on from that and out of the southern front, it's now time for us to move on down to the area of Krunki, where we got to see the Ukrainian forces were bombarding the Russians on that side of the Riva. Oh, and there goes half the house. Okay, we're going to be meeting that. But we can see here, the Russians are just continuing to get hit, and they are demolishing houses. They're demolishing houses, and much like Hot Dog Man demolishes glizzies. I mean, it's incredible. It's like a world record kind of an event. But we can see here that they're continuing to hit these buildings quite heavily, as a matter of fact. We can see the explosion still going on. And, ooh, a nice little fire's brewing. Ooh!
This poor old commie block is getting the commie treatment.
Dude, I'm telling you what, man. Oh, man, I just saw something, Matthew, that you would find funny. I think I might have to tell you, though, over text during the address from Zelensky, but it's hilarious. You're going to have to see it to believe it. But we can see here that the Russians are continuing to get schmacked pretty heavily by Ukrainian drone forces in the area. We can actually see them running around. Oh, my lord, the whole building jumped right there. That was actually pretty wild. And that whole building came down. They were actually just wiping out buildings off the face of the earth with these drones. Pretty impressive, really. Dang. Oh my lord. Well, that building looked a little more solid, but well, I don't know what that was, a confetti bomb, but they're running now. Oh, and it's on fire. The building is on fire. And the building is now starting to collapse as well. And that's the end of the clip. But hey, I gotta say, I appreciate it. I like to see it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to Kyiv for the air defense report. And it does appear the capital air defense did quite well, destroying 19 Shahed 136s overnight. A fairly good air defense report. And now, without further ado, it is time for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 847th day
Дорогі
of the
українці,
war.
українці.
And we're going to be muting that, and then we're going to be getting this full screen, and then we're going to be putting the subtitles in English, which we already have them in. And without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Український.
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні є ще два приєднання до комюніке саміту миру. Збільшилось представництво американського континенту, зокрема Латинської Америки. Вже офіційна організація американських держав, що об'єднує країни обох Америк, Північної та Південної, а також острівна держава Антигуа і Барбуда. Увесь світ ми сприймаємо як рівних, і в цьому наша ідеологічна відмінність від Росії у міжнародних відносинах. Ми поважаємо кожну націю, розраховуємо на кожен голос у співпраці між народами. Саме так побудований статут ООН, щоб всі держави мали значення. Путін же хоче, щоб значення мав тільки він або ще той, кого він сам визначить. Це у Росії типово колоніальний погляд на світ, який ми разом з усіма партнерами маємо зламати. І формат саміту миру, формат нашого комюніке, формат подальшої підготовчої роботи до другого саміту забезпечить саме справедливе ставлення до кожної нації, до кожної держави і, звичайно, до України. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає. Наша команда працює над тим, щоб було ще більше приєднань і щоб ми отримали максимально активну роботу груп щодо пунктів формули миру. І серед перших таких груп плануємо запустити групу щодо енергетики. Ми маємо повернути реальну енергетичну безпеку в усіх її аспектах та подолати російське ставлення до енергії, до енергоресурсів як до зброї. Це стосується також і захисту від російського енерготерору. Світ і в цьому здатен допомогти. Вже на липень ми готуємо перші кроки саме в цьому напрямку. Також сьогодні провів нараду з урядовцями, з командою Офісу та секретарем РНБО щодо ситуації зараз з енергетикою. Ми готуємо рішення, які зроблять більш надійним проходженням опалювального сезону і дадуть людям більше можливостей пройти зараз цей надзвичайно складний період з точки зору енергетики, дефіцитів та відключень. Я доручив представити всі деталі того, що держава може зробити, і деталі того, на які конкретні напрямки щодо енергетики треба і надалі мобілізувати партнерів. Сьогодні ж зустрівся з маршалком польського Сейму, і однією з ключових тем нашої розмови був якраз захист України, наших людей, нашої енергетики від російських терористичних ударів. Ми обговорили ключові потреби, те, що необхідно вже зараз, і чим Польща може допомогти. Обговорили, звичайно, весь двосторонній порядок денний наших країн, а також дипломатичні заходи, які нас усіх в регіоні можуть посилити. Дякую Польщі за вибір бути з Україною у цей час війни. І наші воїни. Дякую кожному і кожній, хто зараз в бою, на бойових постах, у бойових завданнях. Усі елементи наших сил оборони та безпеки. Сьогодні особливо відзначу воїнів Національної гвардії України, які захищають нашу державу на Харківському напрямку. Другий штурмовий загін Центру спецпризначення Нацгвардії «Омега». Дякую вам, воїни. Третя бригада оперативного призначення Нацгвардії «Спартан», а особливо солдат Богдан Лівак та молодший сержант Богдан Сидор. Дякую. 13-та бригада Нацгвардії «Хартія», старший солдат Руслан Федчун. Дякую. Наші прикордонники, бригада «Гард», сержант Віталій Лисий, Чопський та Львівський прикордонні загони, старший солдат Богдан Магоцький та старший сержант Денис Лангазов. Бригада «Помста», підрозділи якої воюють на Лиманському, Сіверському та Бахмутському напрямках, солдат Андрій Кирильчук і головний сержант Владислав Мисько. Дякую вам, хлопці, та усім вашим побратимам. Сьогодні ж я підписав 2 укази про відзначення державними нагородами наших воїнів саме з підрозділів Нацгвардії України та Державної прикордонної служби, працівників Національної поліції та ДСНС України. 445 державних нагород, із них 175 посмертно. Україна завжди пам'ятатиме своїх героїв і буде вдячною кожному і кожній, хто відстояв нашу державність, нашу незалежність. Україна має перемогти. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 847 of The Wire. And that moves us on into the next bit of news, which is actually not news. It's actually the question segment where we get to talk to all of y'all. And it's going to be incredibly fun because there's so many things that we get to talk about. We get to talk about the history. We get to talk about food. We get to talk about where y'all are from. We get to talk about anything and everything. We get to talk about China, Ukraine, Russia, North Korea, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, America, Canada, anything and everything you want, anything and everything. It's all up on the table. All of it is out there for us to talk about. But Matthew, I understand that we have one final question that was asked to the audience tonight. A question that could determine the fate of worlds. And Matthew, what was that question? What were people thinking about it? And what were you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it's time for the final question segment of the stream. And of course, we have one poll left to address. And the question says, Russia says if NATO seizes more Russian assets, then they will do the same to Western assets still in Russia. And what are your thoughts? 77% said seize the Russian assets anyway because it's right. 11% said that would zero out the effect. And 4% said don't seize the assets because it's bad. And here's one thing I saw in the live chat. Someone said, it's literally theft to take stuff and seize it. It's only theft. That's not true. If the law permits it, then it's not theft. Therefore, I'm not agreeing with the 4%. But if you think that, that's fine. But I don't agree with the 4%. But on this one, I would personally say probably go ahead and seize the Russian assets anyway, because it's probably only a matter of time before Russia seizes our Western assets still remaining in Russia. They've already done that with a good portion of them, and it's probably only a matter of time. So we shouldn't let that dissuade us from taking the Russian stuff in the West, because they shouldn't get to keep their yachts if they're going to invade sovereign countries. But Enforcer, what say you?
That seems kind of goofy to me that they threaten to seize our assets because it's like, what do we have in Russia? You know, like nothing. Like it's like, who put stuff in Russia? I don't think anyone ever did. I mean, if there is anything in there, it's not much. That's probably why they're threatening to seize it. It's not like, oh no, they got the West by the balls. It's probably literally nothing. Maybe several, maybe $1 billion, maybe $2 billion worth of stuff. But it's not going to be a lot, that's for sure. So I would say, hell, seize it. I mean, it's not like they're going to be really doing any damage to the West by seizing any Western assets in Russia, so why the hell not? There will be a lot more damage done to them than there will be to us in the long run off of that exchange. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And let's see here. I'm seeing someone say, taxes aren't actually theft. Who in the world said that? Like who in the world said taxes are theft? There are some people though who I know say that, but I don't think those people realize that taxes are pretty much required to make sure that a country exists, because nothing is free. A lot like we talk about with this channel when we thank folks for supporting the channel and we say that it's not free to live. Running a country isn't free either, and so taxes are raised to support the nation and to make sure that the government and the country itself can actually exist, because it costs money to make sure that it does. Some people don't know that, I'm guessing, because, and also some people are like, taxation is theft. It's like, well, what country in the world does not collect taxes? Every single one of them collects taxes. I mean, in some form or another. It's just how governments function. You know, it's like, so I don't know why people say that. There's something a little bit wild. It just comes with living in a civilized society that you pay taxes. But with that, I hope that does address it. But the amount of taxes, now that's up for debate. But taxes in themselves, that's not up for debate. Like, even some people are going to say no taxation without representation. Listen, you're taking that out of context. Like, I can't. I don't know why I had to be so firm about that, but they are taking that out of context. Taxes. The founding fathers said no taxation without representation. They weren't against taxation. They were against taxation where they did not get a say in the taxes that were being raised or how much the taxes would be. That was the problem. But taxes in its own right were not the issue. It was the fact that they didn't get any representation in their taxes or how much they were. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can about that whole deal. But with that, it's time for us to move on into those questions. And I understand, Matthew, that we got some juicy questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
Yes. We have some very juicy questions. And our first one here is going to go to Andy L. And Andy put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Andy, for that support. And huge shout out to you for that.
Hey!
You said, great job, guys, and proud for your growth of the channel. And please take a question from the live chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words, Andy L. And thank you so much for being proud of the growth of this channel. This channel is growing by leaps and bounds every single day. We actually passed 126,000 subscribers last night. So far, we have not passed that today, but we have gained, I think, another 300 members of the Lee Spring Army overnight. We went from 226 to 226,300 as of right now, which is pretty impressive. I don't think anyone can deny that. You know, like that is pretty freaking impressive right there. Matthew, can you deny that?
I cannot deny.
I don't think anyone can. I mean, it's just impressive. 100%. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Andy L. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to stay around to be able to make sure that the channel grows the way it does. And so thank you so much, Andy L, for being an absolute legend, supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And we will make sure to get a question from the chat sponsored by Andy L. And what do we got, Matthew?
All right, we've got some very good live chats tonight, and our first one is going to go to Kid Rock. Kid Rock is back. He said, do you think that Zelensky's relentless pursuit of shells and shell components, meaning powder, has clouded his judgment a bit, namely playing nice with China?
I don't really think his judgment has been clouded on that too much. The Chinese-Ukrainian relations are actually divorced really from everything going on in the war, and it's more so of a grander diplomatic ambition of Ukraine. That's really the reality of it. And that's what really concerns me a bit, because clearly when Zelensky says things and everyone's like, oh, you're taking it out of context. No, I'm not. I think a lot of people are trying to downplay the context that it's in. But when Zelensky has said, and let me see if I can pull this up really quick. Let's just type in Ukraine-China relations. Let's see if we get anything on that. Let's see here. Political relations between Ukraine and China. Oh, look, we actually, I think, have the Embassy of Ukraine in the People's Republic of China right here that put out a statement in the 26th of May of 2022. Let's see. Hang on. I just want to make sure. So let's see here. Let's see. 1 second. I want to. See here. So sadly, this is really just a recap of everything that's happened over the past decade with Chinese-Ukrainian relations. It doesn't really lay out their road plan for the future. But let me see here if I can find some interesting statements. See here. I'm trying to see if I can find anything on it at all. Dang. Dude, they don't really have a lot on this out there. From what I'm pulling up, I mean, it's just like general broad statements, like brushstroke statements. Like, they're countries that do things. And I'm like, hey, listen, if I wanted like a stupid rundown, like I would go to kindergarten. It's like we were wanting an actual breakdown here. Let me see here. Political, nuclear security. What about trade? Let's see. So here we go. Here's a couple of things right here. This is Wikipedia, though, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt. I was looking for something a little bit more clear, like a government source on this sort of a thing. But on the 17th of March of 2022, Chinese ambassador to Ukraine, Fan Jianrong, said that China will support Ukraine both economically and politically. Then, on the 19th of March, Ukraine asked China to join Western countries in condemning Russian brutality, and I don't believe that resulted in anything. But moving on down the list, let's see. She called Zelensky over a month after Xi's summit with the President Putin. Let's see. Inside the Mariupol drama theater, let's see. Wang was among a Chinese delegation visiting Russian-occupied eastern Ukraine. Said the Chinese delegation visit to occupied Ukraine was illegal, and let's see. Isn't it? Let's see. In response, interesting. So sadly, it doesn't really go into a lot here either. So I don't really have a good road work to go off of to explain either one form or another, or even prove myself wrong in the sense. Just because it doesn't really look like a lot of people have been paying that much attention to Chinese Ukrainian relations. But one thing that is interesting here is that 57% of Ukrainians hold a favorable view towards China, which is something that is a little concerning, because if the overwhelming majority of a population, like Ukraine, has a positive view of China, it's highly possible that they will end up becoming an economic partner of the Chinese in the future and having all of the consequences that come from that. I would say that it's not really related to the shell issue, because China probably would not provide any kind of lethal aid or equipment to Ukraine ever, no matter how good the relationship got. One thing, however, that it certainly is going for is an economic lens or an economic route with the Chinese in the future. That's what the Ukrainians seem to be kind of shooting for, at least in my opinion, and that's what Zelensky is kind of hinting at, and that's the thing that I find a little bit concerning. So I would say that it's not really a clouded judgment by Zelensky. This is probably more so of an actual deliberate and well thought out idea by the Ukrainian government, but I would say that I personally disagree with it because it could inherently go against Western interests down the road. But with that, I hope that does address it well. And also, I see that some people agree with me and disagree with me on that pretty much every single time I bring it up in the chat. And that's fine. Like, everyone can disagree with me. Everyone can agree with me. It doesn't really matter. But one thing I will say, though, is that I'm going to have to stick with my guns on this one and say that Ukraine trying to seek any kind of relationship with the Chinese is not a good path. And we will just have to wait, and time will tell. But I am so certain about this concept that I have that I will tell y'all, I would put money on it. Watch if the Ukrainians ever get in a relationship with the Chinese. It is going to go so south for Western interests. It will be unbelievable. We'll see. And hopefully I'd be wrong if they ever did pursue any kind of a path like that. But I have a feeling that it would not turn out that well.
And then you'd hear Ukraine saying, "Please help, help." It's like, no. It's like, you should have realized they were going to put you basically in debt slavery if you like teamed up with them. It's like obvious as hell. And it's like Zelensky is a smart guy. Like, he's educated. He went to law school even. So he's not dumb. He's a smart guy. He can clearly look at these other countries that have been enslaved to China through debt and realize that is exactly what China would do to this country as well if we try to team up with them. So hopefully what Zelensky's saying in public is simply diplomatic talk and not actually trying to team up with China, because I'm with the enforcer. That would be an absolute disaster for the West, and also ultimately in the long term a disaster for Ukraine itself.
I would certainly agree with that. Really building upon what I said, but I just cannot stress it enough. Ukrainian-Chinese relations is a disaster waiting to happen. It is. And, you know, like, and I don't mean to make any grandstands on the channel, you know, because rarely ever do. I just go, it's a conversation, it is what it is. And it is still a conversation, and it is what it is, and none of us are going to be changing anything. But I am going to put money on this. I will bet on this, that this will not end up well. It just won't. Like, and that's why I'm so big into saying Ukraine should not be, like, the West should just simply not allow Ukraine to even deal with the Chinese at all, or even talk to them. You don't have to condemn them, but you don't talk to them either, to try and say, let's build a friendship or something, because it's just not a good route. I mean, it's just not at all. And, you know, and some people, and I see one particular person, and it's actually a channel, Legend Kaltenberg, is like, you seem like you're reading too much into this, and maybe I am, but saying that you want to be friends with the Chinese doesn't just mean that you know, have kumbaya and a little diplomatic visit here and there, a state visit. It usually means that you start tying the countries together through economic means, through trade means. And that is something can't get across enough. It is going to be a disaster. I mean, it'd be a lot better for the West to step into Ukraine, which we've already done with institutions like BlackRock, and support economic regrowth in Ukraine. And not only that, it binds the Ukrainians to the Western world. And a lot of people are like, well, that sounds wrong. That's exactly what the Chinese are doing. And you're right. I mean, like, in the end, we'll economically bind the Ukrainians to us. But it's much better for us to benefit from it than anyone else. Because it's not like we can sit there and go, oh, well, that's terrible that everyone's trying to draw Ukraine into some larger sphere and kind of make them a minor member of it. They ought to be able to do what they want. Well, that's great, but that's never going to happen. They're going to be a part of someone's sphere. It's either going to be ours or it's going to be the Chinese. The Russians are out of the picture at this point. They have been so devastated by this war, economically and militarily, they would never be able to rope anyone into a sphere because there's nothing there. So it really is just America versus China. We're both going to do the same thing in the end. So wouldn't y'all rather benefit from what would come out of this than the Chinese, which is the opposite group? And there's nothing to benefit. There's everything to lose and nothing to gain if the Chinese end up taking Ukraine. That's what I'm thinking. And that's what I'm saying. And also Kallenberg said it may be normal diplomatic activity. It may be, but the thing is that it looks different. I mean, it looks different in the way that it's being approached. Because back in the day, it was just kind of a mutual thing because of the grain, and also because Ukraine did end up selling some weapons to the Chinese, like their first aircraft carrier. And it was just kind of, it's just kind of middling relations just to have them, but the thing is now is that, to me, at least, from what it looks like from Zelensky's end, it looks like he's honestly begging for the Chinese to get involved with Ukraine somehow. I mean, that's at least how I'm seeing it, because there is no reason to reach out to the Chinese right now. You don't have to condemn, like I was saying, you don't have to condemn them. But you don't have to support them either. You don't have to try and become friends with them. You can just leave them alone. Ukraine doesn't have to make a comment on the Chinese at all. And the Chinese will be fine with that. Their position isn't going to change because the Ukrainians support them or say nothing about them. The position will remain the same. And yet Zelensky is continuously going, we need the Chinese in here, let them be friends. And I'm like, why in the world is that statement being made? It shouldn't be made. It's not a good one. It's just begging for bad things to happen. And I think, and we will, and of course, everyone's saying just trust Zelensky, let him do his thing. And of course, I can't change anything. None of us can change anything with this. We're all just talking. But I will tell y'all, if Ukrainian-Chinese relations actually form, you just trust me. It's not going to go well. It's not going to go well for us. It's not going to go well for them either. And we may as well have just thrown tens of billions of dollars into a fire and burned it, because we're not going to get anything out of this in the end by supporting Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But once again, it is just an opinion. I'm just not a big fan of anti-Western countries. That particularly includes China, considering that they're the largest and most threatening of the anti-Western countries. And so whenever I see them getting involved in anything, my initial response is containment. And that's what I'm really moving for right here, is more so for Chinese containment pertaining to Ukraine. But I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to another channel legend. This time is JD Macko 23, who's been around for ages, and he puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to you, JD Macko, for that support and helping to keep our channel running. He says, how about a hood review of my city, drop down in the corner of Market Street and North River Street in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and then head south on River Street, and then Susquehanna River Commons on the right, and then the old Cole Barron mansions on the left.
Oh, look, Jack. Dude, look. This is where it is. It's just south.
No, I was born in Utah, Scranton.
All right, so let's get down into Wilkes-Barre. I think that's how it's pronounced. And let's go to North River Street. So we got South River Street. Where is North River Street? Here it is. North River Street. And then we've got, what was it? North River Street. Let's see. And North River Street. So then there's Market Street.
And, I used to go down to the river and drink some water from the river, and the water would be anyways.
All right. But anyways, we're going to be dropping down right where he asked us, which is right here.
Right next to the river.
Now, this ain't no hood. Everyone keeps on telling us, JD Macko, you said it was a hood review. This ain't no hood. This is just a normal town. I like the bridge, though. Now, that bridge is really nice. I like this. Let's see.
Oh, wow.
I
Look at those eagles.
Squaw! Dude, I love this bridge. It's so nice looking. I like it. Now, what was the next place? Then, head south on River Street. The Susquehanna River Commons on the right. So where is the... I'm guessing that this is the Commons down here. Right here, maybe. Maybe this is it? I feel like this would be it. Honestly, this is not a bad place. This is actually pretty nice. I've been told bad things about northern Pennsylvania. I've been told that it's been in an economic recession since the oil industry died, and then some people said that it's kind of had a small rebirth since the occurrence of shale mining, or more so shale drilling. But this looks really nice. I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of a fan of this.
This is not a hood by any stretch of the imagination. Like, this is... I guess people have different definitions of a hood. Like, to me, this looks like just normal America to me. In fact, it looks kind of clean, actually.
Really nice, actually.
But then again, this is the North America, the northern part of America. So the southern part, generally, is just a fact. I'm not trying to put it down as we live down here. It's just kind of poorer down here in the South. It's just the way it's always been. And up there, it's really not that way, at least everywhere. There are poor parts, but it's just not, pretty much all over the place. But this to me looks very nice.
So interestingly enough, Matty, this house right here, I was just reading the sign while you were talking. This guy, Fred Morgan Kirby, is the pioneer of the American Dollar Store, or the 5 and 10 cent store.
Oh, damn. Now, see, that also played a pretty big part in South's decline, is all the Dollar Generals everywhere.
Oh.
They're literally everywhere. You can drive out in the middle of the woods, like in like the boondocks back there, and there's like a freaking Dollar General in the corner.
One second, man. A good place for $1. Dude, I found it. This would be a good place for $1 General. 1 second, hang on, man. Let me go get this meme. Have you ever seen this meme, Matthew, where it's like, this would be a good place for $1 General?
I've never seen that.
Okay, so it's like some giant floating brain or something. Let me see if I can go get it.
Ugh.
Here we go. I found it. Right there. This flying brain, like in the middle of nowhere, says this would be a perfect spot for $1 General. It's like, that's what the South is like, man. It's just freaking Dollar Generals everywhere.
Where's the brain supposed to be?
I don't know. I have no clue, but it's kind of
weird. That was the most weird, wacky meme I've ever seen. Like, just a big ass like jellyfish brain like flying through the sky. Come on, let's put a Dollar General over there. Let's do it, man. What the hell? Like, what kind of memes are you looking at?
I don't know. But beyond that, I mean, it's true, though. I mean, they put Dollar Generals literally anywhere. Not the brain part, but the Dollar General thing. You know what I mean?
I guess.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But anyways, I still got to say. Now, oh, wait a minute. Crime Watch? Who's the little man down there with the big nose? Like, what's up with him? I don't know. Anyways, still pretty cool. And I got to say, JD Macko 23, thank you for allowing us a hood review. People have really adapted the hood review into just being a thing. Like, it's not really hoods per se. It's more so just neighborhoods for the most part. But I really do like seeing them because it shows us a lot of variety here in America that we don't really get to see a lot down here in Alabama. Everything kind of looks the same. But that bridge is beautiful. I mean, that is such a well-built bridge with the arches, the actual inns with the eagles as the ornaments to the tops. I mean, what a place. I mean, very pretty. And I like the buildings, too. The buildings are very nice architectural styles. I respect it. Also, look, they were doing some renovations here, apparently, to the bridge area. But, man, I would like to come up here and see this place someday. I would like to see it, me personally. Oh, look, it's a traditional McDonald's. An American institution.
They've got McDonald's still. It's not tasty. Oh man, can you imagine like how bad the quality has gone down on Tasty? Like McDonald's quality is like kind of meh, like when you go there, like depending on the restaurant you go to. But in Russia, now it's turned into Tasty, and they can't even get like, I don't even think they can get the stuff from McDonald's distribution anymore. That must be terrible, awful.
Man, you know it must be. I mean, it's got to be the worst rock gut food that you've ever. Jerry Seinfeld?
Oh?
Oh? I'm just saying.
What's happening?
What is the deal with? Oh, that one was that Shaggy. Anyways, moving on from that. I do thank you so much once again for support, JD Mako23, an absolute legend. And I got to thank you for letting us take a look around Wilkes-Barre, your hometown. And it is a beautiful place, I got to say. Not bad. Now, if you want to see where we come from, I can show you. Montgomery, Alabama. This is where we're from. And if you want to see specifically where we're from, it's kind of up around this area, I think, around here. Let me see if I can drop you down in there. Oop. This is where, not really, but this is kind of where we're from in the city. This is where we grew up. This is actually like our home stomping grounds. And then the firefights began, and then we had to move out. But beyond that, it was nice to see. It's nice to see nicer places in America, even up there in Pennsylvania, which is actually kind of shocking. Also, right outside of Montgomery, Alabama, this is actually kind of cool, is the rail yard. And what's really neat, and what really actually kicked off my fascination about trains when I was a kid, is that we would drive through here, you know, like just on the way in and out of the city, because this was a fairly common road for us to take, and you would look over here and there would be all this abandoned junk. Like, it just looked like rotting junk. One thing I didn't know until a lot later, looking at the satellite pictures, is that this is actually the old roundhouse in Montgomery, Alabama for the locomotives that would operate out of the city, and the turntable was right there. And also the coal loading station was also right here as well, and this is where, in this little ditch, where they would actually dump the coal out of the boilers when the coal turned into ash, or they were getting ready to retire a locomotive inside of the shed. All this, like, you just don't know this, like, growing up, but it was really cool to figure out later. And then also we have a Union Station right down here, which is now just like a random office building kind of a thing. But let me see if I can show y'all that station, because it's actually fairly pretty. See here, we ought to be able to see it right here. Here we go. This is kind of a side view of it. It's a fairly pretty building. The last time I think it was used as an actual railroad station was in the late 90s, because that's the last time that Amtrak actually had a calling station in Montgomery, Alabama. But beyond that, it's never been used since. Kind of sad. But anyways, with that, I thought I'd share with you all some interesting stuff about, you know, just Montgomery, Alabama, which is where we're from. And if you want to see, let me see what downtown Montgomery looks like. I think we can get it to where we can kind of show it. And this isn't that bad of a street. Where the hell's the collapsing building, Matthew? The one that they're holding up with the stilts. Let's
see. Where's this now? Where? What?
Oh, here we go. Here it is. There's the collapsing building right here. I know we could find it. So this little area here, you're like, wow, this looks like shit. Yeah, it does. Because this used to actually be a building, and then one day out of the blue, the building just started collapsing. Like, it literally just caved in on itself. And a lot of buildings like that are like that in downtown Montgomery. You just don't know which ones. But this used to be a building here that literally just caved in one day, and now it's just an empty hole in the ground. They still have the building here, like one of the walls that collapsed at this point, but then the whole thing caved in at some point eventually. But yeah, you know, the whole downtown's like that, to be quite honest. It's a pretty interesting place, downtown Montgomery. And then you have the state capitol building here, which isn't that nice. And also, for some reason, the folks like the state troopers that work the state capitol building are like the rudest state troopers you ever run into. Don't know why. Like, it's like they're like, let's take the biggest assholes in the state trooper force and let's put them in the Capitol building. I don't know why. Like, I'm like, it just stops people from going in there unless you're on a school field trip. And I would personally like to go around in there, you know, take a look around. But then you run into the state troopers. You're like, yeah, I'd rather not. I'll pass. I'll go on another day when the state troopers aren't there, which they're always there. So you never get to go in. But anyways, that's enough of that. I'm rabbit holing to hell and back. I just wanted to talk to y'all about our home stomping ground since we took a look at Wilkes-Barre up in Pennsylvania near Scranton. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, JD Mako23, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sully Canuck, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to Sully. He's always supported the channel, and we appreciate it very, very much. And Sully says, I love to see the subs growing so steadily, and I'm quite worried at the moment, though, as my son is currently serving in the Indo-Pacific on a Canadian frigate with our allies conducting exercises, and I'm praying he gets home safe and LSA.
And I'm praying he gets home safe too, Sully Canuck. And hopefully, of course, he most likely will. Tensions are high in the area, but nevertheless, a full-on war will most likely not happen, probably for several years, to be entirely honest. It sounds like that whole rumor that started on Twitter that the Chinese were going to invade Taiwan in early June was a complete lie, which I should have known. But most likely tensions will not boil over for years, so I'm sure he'll be fine. And we will be praying for him to get back safely, though. But still, thank you so much for enjoying this channel growing and loving to see the steady sub growth. We can't believe it. It's still growing at lightning fast speeds, which is insane to see every single day. Like even today, which we didn't publish a short war video on because there wasn't really enough news in the middle of the day, we ended up still seeing a net gain, a huge net gain, of about 300 subscribers on a day that we didn't even put anything up, which is crazy. Some people would kill for that kind of subscriber numbers on a daily basis. Some people are actually losing subscribers on a daily basis nowadays, and then putting those weird looking thumbnails out where they look like they're about to do something very questionable on YouTube. Ew, yuck. But beyond that, oh, yuck. You know what I'm talking about, Matthew. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But beyond that, I wish your son the best. And also, Sully Canuck, interesting to hear that your son followed in his father's footsteps and joined the Royal Canadian Navy as well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and helping to make this thing possible. You are an old guard of the channel, have been here through and through, and helping this thing to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I think some of y'all saw it. There was literally a bot in here a minute ago that called me a Nazi Zionist, which I couldn't even really get mad, to be honest with you, because that was just kind of like so insane to say, because you're literally like canceled both of them out. You can't be both. So I know for a fact that was a Russian bot because they call Zelensky, who is Jewish, they call him a Nazi. So it's definitely the Russians. The Russians need to go back to and get their education, if they could get some, and learn the two different meanings between those words, because they clearly don't know. And it's like an entire populace problem inside of Russia, apparently, including the bot farms. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat here, we have one from Thomas Kruger, who puts in a $7 donation. And thank you very much, Thomas, for the support. And he says, thanks, guys.
And thank you, Thomas Kruger, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Eponymous Moose, who puts in a 5 and says, any word on Shoigu?
Shoigu! And actually, no, we don't hear anything about him anymore. He's disappeared. May actually have truly disappeared. We don't know, but from what we understand right now, there's not really a lot of word on his condition and what he's doing anymore. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, really quickly, I was just wanting to say something really quickly to the bots, Matthew. A quick word to them. You know, considering that we covered the Chinese tonight, you know, we did have like 1 or 2 Chinese bots. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I had to flex on them a little bit. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, in our next 2 super chats, these go to Chuck Farley and also Carrie Ann LSA. They each put in a $5 donation and without a comment, but huge shout out to Chuck and also Carrie Ann as well for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank the both of you for the support. And while y'all didn't throw in comments, the support does say a lot. It helps us to keep this channel running. 2 things that we're greatly appreciative of. And I gotta thank y'all so much for being massive supporters of this channel and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it wasn't for y'all here supporting this channel, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank y'all once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Master Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $5 donation. And I'm celebrating my 840th day with the LSA, and keep up the amazing work, Jugga Jugga, and take one from the chat boys.
And Jugga Jugga Igor! And thank you so much for the support, and congratulations on celebrating your 840th day today with the Lee Spring Army LSA Master Sergeant Figment. And I gotta say, thank you so much for enjoying our amazing work and helping to support it and keep it up. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing up and keep it rolling. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support and making this channel possible and helping it to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Rangers Rule, who says, what are your thoughts with Saudi going to China's currency and dropping the dollar?
I have not heard about that. I would let me go Google that really quickly. Saudi Arabia ditches U.S. dollar. What's happening between the U.S. dollar and petrodollar? Oh, God.
Petrodollars.
Oh, God. The I'm telling you, I actually get twitches when I hear about that goofy petrodollar thing. So, let's see here. Yep, that's exactly what I thought. To quickly explain something that I found out recently is a big thing with conspiracy theorists, among many things, is that there's this concept that there is this petrodollar, which is a special kind of currency. Like, no joke, this is what the conspiracy theorists say. It's a special kind of currency that props up the U.S. dollar. It's actually the secret money that makes the U.S. money worth something. No one knows about it, but for some reason all the conspiracy theorists know about it and know exactly what it's called. But it's called the petrodollar, and the petrodollar is entirely supported by oil, and and Saudi Arabia has America by the balls, and if they drop the petrodollar, America will collapse. It just will die overnight. And the problem with that is that the conspiracy theories are absolutely stupid. Because the petrodollars are U.S. dollars. It's just U.S. dollars that are used in oil trading. So it's like saying, like let's say that you exchanged money. You know, you were trading, I don't know, cars for money. You know, U.S. dollars on an international market. That would be like coming up with something called the auto dollar, which is some magical dollar that is super secret that supports the U.S. dollar. And if the auto dollar died, the U.S. dollar would collapse, which is a really goofy concept. From what I understand, the Saudis have not dropped the dollar. It's just that they are now opening up the idea of coming up with a whole bunch of different reserve currencies that they'll trade with for oil, which really just means that the Chinese are starting to enter the Middle East and they're starting to buy oil. And so instead of accepting US dollars, which was the primary trade currency, and considering that China is trying to make itself a viable country with a viable reserve currency, they're now opening up themselves to the concept of using the Chinese renminbi, which is the Chinese version of a trade currency, which is really stupid because China actually has two different currencies. They have the yuan, or the won, which is the actual internal currency of China used inside of China, and then they have the renminbi, which is their foreign trade currency, a totally separate currency. It's so stupid, because it's like, why in the world do you have two currencies instead of just using the won? You know, it makes no sense. Like, that would be like the United States having the U.S. dollar, and then we have the U.S. federal trade notes, or something like that. It's like, why would we do that? It just complicates the process. But that's what the Chinese do. It's incredibly complicated. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I didn't hear a lot about that. And also, a lot of people overplay things when it comes to America. They make it sound like America's by the balls by everyone, and everyone can destroy us overnight. The reality is that the Saudi Arabians are still primarily trading in U.S. dollars because the U.S. dollar is still the main reserve currency of the world. And let me go pull up main reserve currencies. So here we go. And let me go here. Let me go here. And here we go. So this shows it fairly well. So these are reserve currencies of the world, at least up until 2016, which it appears that's where it ends. So sadly, we can't get any modern translation for this. And also, by the way, the reason why Deutsche Marks are here, as well as French francs, and then they disappear, is because in 1998, that's when the euro became a thing. Actually, it was 1999. The euro became the thing, so all of it merged into the euro. So Deutsche Marks and francs just became euros. But beyond that, you can see that all the way up until 2016, the U.S. dollar is the primary reserve currency of the world. It makes up 63% of all reserve currencies at the moment. The Chinese don't get close, even now. And let me see if we actually have a modern graph for that. So the U.S. dollar, even still in the present day, makes up 58.4% of all reserve currencies in the world. The euro makes up nearly 20%. The Japanese yen makes up 5.7%. The British pound sterling, 4.84%. The Canadian dollar, crazily enough, is 2.58%. And then the Chinese renminbi comes in behind the Canadian dollar and just a little bit above the Australian dollar at 2.29%. So you can get the clear indication here off of how much reserve currencies there are in the world that the Chinese renminbi is not going to be any competitor to the US dollar anytime soon. They're not even going to be a competitor to the pound sterling anytime soon, which is far down the list as far as reserve currencies are concerned. And that's why I actually get really angry to the point that I actually start getting a little irate when I hear goofy statements like BRICS is thriving and the dollar is dying. Because if you have any damn common sense and can just read charts, that's clearly not the case. Like, even the Chinese renminbi, of the largest and most powerful economy in the world, second only to the United States, is so far down the list that it falls behind Canada's reserve currency. You know that they're not a major competitor in the in the reserve currency world. And that means that while the magical, mythical petrodollar has disappeared, it's still going to exist, because it's not like Saudi Arabia is going to go, you know what, F it, we're just going to cut out like 60% of all trading nations in the world, and we're just going to deal in the renminbi. Like, the good luck living in poverty if you're in the Middle East at that point, because you're not going to be making any money that way. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Sorry if I sound a little bit aggravated answering that question, because it's not aggravation at the question. It's actually a good question. It's aggravation at things I have heard traveling around the world. Really just Alabama. And that's my world, is moving around here. Every once in a while, I'll hear someone say something silly about reserve currencies and how the US dollar and the US economy is over. And I will say this, and this is the stupid thing. People will take rising prices due to inflation here in America, which, it's not great. Like, I don't think anyone can deny it. Things have gotten a little bit more expensive in America. But people will take that and then go, oh, America's collapsing. While the GDP figure is still rising, the reserve currency number is still pretty high. I mean, it's not really changing. It hasn't really changed since 2020 at all. And people will go, oh my God, it's over. It's like, what the hell are y'all talking about? Like everything's fine. Like, we're still up there as a preeminent power in the world. I mean, we are the preeminent power in the world. What the hell are y'all talking about? Y'all are like living in La La Land or whatever. But with that, I digress. But I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running and helping it to be possible. Because if it was not for folks like you, Ben, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. Also, sorry, it's not been, but thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ben Eit. I hope I'm not butchering your last name. He puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Ben, for that support. He said, if Russia and China put feet on the ground, how quickly would Canada fold?
Well, if they put feet on the ground, it really depends on what kind of a person they are. I'm just kidding. But if they put feet on the ground, how quickly would Canada fold? How
did Canada get drawn into this?
I don't know. Are you saying invading Canada? Or I don't know. I would say they wouldn't fold because the Canadians are actually known historically for committing a vast amount of war crimes. No joke. Like, they are the war crime people. Like watch out. Ooh, watch out. It's the Canadians. They're here with clubs and they're here with revolvers. That's not for fighting. That's for when you surrender. But beyond that, I hope that does address that fairly well. No disrespect to any of our Canadian viewers here, because the Canadians actually historically are one of the most successful countries in war. Funnily enough, although they have a very common stereotype of having a kind disposition, they actually do incredibly well at war. And in the First World War, they were known exclusively for committing the most war crimes, which is wild to think about. But they were known for really taking almost no prisoners at all. They would almost execute every single German that ever surrendered, which is something wild. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. There went Sparky, rip Sparky. But with that, I hope that does address it well. Thank you so much for the support, Ben. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to, also, let me get done typing my roast real quick.
Ooh, I'm really gonna burn him in the live chat section. Get him, Matthew. Get him.
Let's see here. There we go.
This channel is full of fools. Oh, let me go read it correctly. God, this channel is fools. The only fool I see here is your mama. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Amy Lee Rodriguez, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Amy Lee, for that support. And they said, what do you think about the Russian submarine off the coast of Florida falling apart?
Isn't it poetic? Did you hear about that, Matthew?
I did hear about that. There was junk falling off of it as it was heading out.
Yeah, it's like, isn't that ironic? I would say that's just par for the course these days, the kind of Russia we're dealing with. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again for support. It is funny, though, and hopefully we'll see the thing implode or something, or have some engine difficulties where it actually has to get towed back to Russia, because that would be the funniest thing you'd ever heard. But with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Amy Lee Rodriguez, and thank you once again for making this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a $5 donation. And huge shout out to Wyatt for his support as well. He said, hello, LSA and enforcers, and I've been gone. I've been working in the medical field for 10-hour days,
Dang.
5 days, and on one off. But it's still less time than Chris's mom.
Oh!
Oh, God. This is rough. Oh, gosh. Chris's mom spending time in a bad part of L.A. Terrible street in L.A. I'm not sure if I can read this off, to be perfectly honest with you. This is pretty rough. But thank you, Wyatt, very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Wyatt Logan sitting there, man. He's coming out of the hospital, man. He's like, he's sitting there. You're like, are you good, man? Dude, I'm just tired. But not as worn out as Chris's mom. It's like, Wyatt Logan's coming out with the shots fired. Even tired, Wyatt Logan comes in with shots fired. And I gotta say, respect to Wyatt Logan, still popping off the caps, even at this point. I gotta say, thank you for the massive support. Sadly, I don't really think we can read off the rest of that, but we are still massively appreciative of the support of Wyatt Logan and helping this channel to keep on running and still throwing shots off at Chris's mom, just throwing straight heaters. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I was scrolling through Twitter here to see if we had any more breaking news that was coming out. I see here from a post from Blaskovka on Twitter. It turns out that Ukraine has banned the activities of the political party Nash Cry, which was created mainly from ex-regionalists. And in addition to the ban, the property, funds, and other assets of the party were transferred to the state. So I guess Ukraine took them out, took good care of them. They were out here causing trouble, I guess. So that political party is no longer, it's gone out of Ukraine, and it is snuffed out. So I guess, honestly, Zelensky knows what's best. So if he took the party out and they needed to go away, they just had to go away. But just want to say that. That's a big piece of news that just came out. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here, we have a $5 super chat from Gumby S, who does not leave a comment. But huge shout out to you, Gumby, and thank you very much for helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And yeah, thank you so much for the support, Gumby. One of my favorite toys growing up. Actually, it was one of my dad's favorite toys growing up. But still, I got to thank you for the support, Gumby, yes. And helping this channel to keep on running. But you help it to be possible for us to say Gumby. And I thank you, Gumby, for the support and making this channel a reality. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Caviar, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Caviar, for that support. They said, what would it be a good idea if NATO amassed troops near Russia's border to help relieve the Ukrainian front lines? Or would it be similar to the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I would say that would probably end up being a little bit similar to the Cuban Missile Crisis. We don't want to escalate in that sense, because then we probably will end up creating some sort of a conflict that we really don't want. And that's one thing we always have to remember, everyone, is that we don't really want to try and get in a war with Russia. In a last case resort, we may, but we're not really wanting to rush to that. We're wanting to see if we can finagle our way around not getting involved in the war or getting what we want without having to get directly involved in the conflict. So in my honest opinion, I'd have to say, nah, I don't think we should do that. If anything, we should just continue to support Ukraine militarily and then see how that goes. And I have a feeling it will go well. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Caviar. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a $5 donation. And shout out to Adam, and also welcome back. He said, thank you for this channel.
And thank you so much, Adam McLean, for the support to this channel. You fit super chat ever. And thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And thank you, Adam McLean, for enjoying this channel greatly. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Master Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $2 donation and says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And hit that like button. It is an order. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing a reality and help it to be possible. And so thank you again for that. And thank you for so much for being a longtime viewer. And thank you. And with that, we're on to the next one. But still, I'm just playing with you, LSA Master Sergeant. Thank you so much for being here forever. And thank you so much for being an incredible friend, not only just a fan, but a friend. And also thank you so much once again for sending us all the neat IDF memorabilia. I still have mine on my desk, including the little paratrooper patch. It's all incredibly nice. I like it. And I thank you so much for that, because that was incredibly kind of you. And so with that, we are on to the last super chat of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the live chats.
All right, and this one's going to go to Cat Chaser, who puts in a 2 and says, trolls do not give money. And that's actually not true, Cat Chaser. We've had many trolls give money before, including the hot dog man himself, who donated the $100 that was helped used to try to serve him. But trolls have given money in the past, and it's been hilarious, but they don't last very long. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support, Cat Chaser, but Matthew's absolutely right. We actually have had bots before put in super chats. We've even had Hot Dog Man himself throw in super chats, which is very bizarre when you think about it, especially considering that was $100. And I think that was a mistype when that happened. I think it was supposed to be 10, but in a crack-fueled frenzy, an extra 0 was added, and then we just got 100. I think that's what happened. But beyond that, people have thrown in support that have hated this channel, which is really weird. And I don't know what actually drives them to do something like that, but they do. And I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. You know, something that I was just thinking, you know, like, I would bet you that $100 is sorely missed these days.
Probably so at this point.
I mean, especially with that kind of rent, you know, like you've got to be scraping around the dollars. I mean, you know, maybe a vacation fund here and there, something like that, you know, just to make sure that the lights keep on. You know, like it would be hard. It would be tough. But sometimes you just got to persevere, and sometimes, Matthew, you just got to grift.
Oh man, the grift.
Oh man, you know, oh man, you got to get out there on that grift. I mean that grind. Oh man. But with that, I hope we addressed that well, and thank you so much once again for the support, Cat Chaser. And while you say that trolls do not give money, I know one thing that certainly ain't be giving money is Chris's mom.
Oh,
Very sad case. Very sad case. Many such cases. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And now we are on to the last super chat of this segment, and then we're going to get into the live chats.
all right. And this one goes to Mitchell Heverly, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Mitchell, for that support as well. And they said, if you want to see some nice mountains, look at Renovo, Pennsylvania.
Oh, and we will. Let's go take a look at Renovo. Renovo, Pennsylvania. Oh, wow. Where is this? Dude, this is in the middle of the Susquehannock State Forest, or the Allegheny National Forest, whichever one you want to call it. But let's drop down here. Well, actually, let's just look at the pictures. All right. It's got that classic Pennsylvania look. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. That's cool. I really do. I forgot what those things are called, but I like them. Let's see here. Man. Is this coal country, by chance? Big Louie's Pizza! Oh, you know, the
Big
pizza,
Louie!
dude, with a place looking like this, that pizza's got a schmack. You know what I mean? Like, goodness. Let's see. Big Louie's is the only thing in this town, apparently. Like, but let's drop down. Let's see if we can see some mountains. Whoa, holy moly. Wow, that's a... Wow, dude, this is like... You know what this reminds me of, Matt? This reminds me of the Smoky Mountains down here in northern Alabama. It looks kind of like it.
Our mountains are kind of smoky.
What do you mean? The Appalachians look the same all the way up, you stupid son of a bitch. But I like it. I mean, it looks really nice, especially at this time of year in October. Wow, this is pretty. I like it. And I got to thank you so much for the support. sharing this with us. And I was just told this is, in fact, coal country, and I would assume so. It was oil country for a time as well up here in this area. But alas, the oil ran out. And so the oil fields moved on. The area went into, I think, a depression for a while. It was like a regional depression. But they've actually had a resurgence due to shale. And that's something that a lot of people don't know is that everyone says, oh, the oil will never run out. But the oil actually does run out, like it did in northern Pennsylvania. And when it runs out, they have to go and find new oil fields to tap into. Now, technically, they don't. Well, they really don't run dry. That's the thing. Like when I say they run out, it's more so that the drilling technology of the time didn't allow them to drill deeper or process any other kind of oil-based products in the areas, and then they have to move on. But once the technology came around for shale production, then the economy in this area actually resurged, because then they just brought back the rigs. They brought back the shell mining rigs, and then they mined for shale, which is the leftovers in the deposit that were solidified. And you can actually bubble those up to the surface using a special kind of treatment, and you can continue to get oil out of the region, which is what they're currently doing right now. But even then, shaling will eventually run out as well, just like the original deposits ran out in this area. And then at that point, there is nothing left. It's been completely depleted of its oil resources at that point. And that's why a lot of people are saying, and that's why, to explain this, a lot of people are saying that there has to be a move to something else, because oil will not last forever. And while there is enough reserves to last certainly for decades, especially here in America, deposits and such things, for decades without a doubt, and then beyond that, it may start becoming a bit more difficult to supply the entire nation's demands off of the available reserves left, because consumption is only rising every year. It's not staying stagnant. That's why people are talking about there's got to be some kind of a solution. Although there's different ways people trying to argue why there has to be a solution, there is kind of a consensus that there has to be some sort of a different solution. My honest opinion, just putting this out there, it's nuclear, but no one really seems to be a big fan of that. But given another 20 years, I think people will finally come around. But with that,
Man, I don't think they're going to have a choice, to be honest. I've heard that these data centers out there, for running AI, because it requires massive supercomputers to actually run the AI program itself. They're going to have to build like several nuclear reactors to try to power the new data centers, which is crazy. It's going to need reactors for just that.
I don't know what you just hit in the background because I heard doom. I was like, what the hell? But I'm now hearing some other stuff falling around. What's going on over
Actually,
there, man?
I bumped my desk the first time. I slid under the desk a little bit because the chair had fallen into a hole in the mat. And it binked the glass drink holder thing over here. So then I slid back out of the hole and I slammed the desk back forward and it clinked back the other way.
Oh my god, dude! I just heard you talking. I heard dong. It's like a gong back there. And then I said, "What the hell is that?" And then I heard clink, and I was like, "What the hell?" Like it's like this. It's like the gaff soundboard back there or something. But yeah, I mean they're going to have
These little sawy little plastic chair roller things on the floor. They seep down into the carpet. They don't hold up worth a damn. It's like there's literally a hole in the front of it. I just went forward just then, and it literally rolled into a hole. It was violent too. It slammed into the wood on the desk. I was like, bam! I was like, damn! And then it almost knocked everything over. My monitor was shaking. It was almost a disaster. But you didn't hear nothing out of me. I was silent.
Clink. I was like, what the hell? But anyways, yeah, getting back to our whole nuclear power thing, I would have to say yes. They are eventually going to have to just move towards nuclear power. I think it's an inevitable certainty, to be quite honest with you all. And of course, they say that even nuclear power would be finite, which I find to be kind of weird, because we do know that there is a very large amount of radioactive material below the surface of the planet that could be mined to be able to be used and refined into usable nuclear fuels. It really is just a matter of researching to be able to create usable nuclear reactors or multi-fuel reactors that can operate off of different kinds of fuels, not just uranium-235, but any other kind of radioactive isotope out there, and we will be able to have a fairly unlimited and sustainable form of energy, especially when we are able to finally perfect nuclear fusion, which is currently in the process. They finally made a major breakthrough and were able to conduct nuclear fusion for a very small amount of time. Once nuclear fusion and that breakthrough is accomplished, cheap and really unlimited electricity or unlimited power will be available from that point forward. And really all of at least the United States energy concerns and the Western world's energy concerns will be addressed in that one single moment. You can actually make, like, and this is one thing I'll also say as well, electric cars at the moment seem to be a little bit difficult to implement due to how expensive and how resource expansive the batteries are. The batteries are really what's holding back electric technology at the moment. And also on top of that, there's really no way to store electricity if y'all didn't know. There's really no good way to do that. So you have to produce the demand that the grid needs at that moment. Just enough, not too much and not too little. But the thing is currently with electric cars is that the batteries are an issue, and not only that, the pull from the grid is also going to end up being an issue, because right now, like I was saying, the U.S. energy grid is only built right now to meet the demands of normal consumer consumption. It's not really factoring in that the entire U.S. auto grid, the entire U.S. auto industry may also be eating into the grid in the future, which is a bit of an issue. So then you have to figure out how are we going to address that issue? It's not that it's an impossible issue to fix. It's just that no one's really dealing with that right now or really talking about that being an impending issue. It's more like we're going to be reactive on that instead of proactive. And I think it would be a lot better to be proactive in that regard. So that way it isn't causing unneeded friction. It'll be a frictionless process. And what needs to be done in reality for the amount of land that it would take up, the cheapness of it in reality, and not only that, the safety of it would be nuclear reactors of some sort. Modern nuclear reactor designs are incredibly safe. They have 1 million fail-safes. It is next to impossible to actually have a meltdown occur with a modern day reactor with the proper amount of fail-safes in it. So I would say the United States needs to put a massive amount of funding into revamping the nuclear power plants that we currently have and refitting the reactors, either to have modern safety features or completely gutting the current nuclear power plants and then replacing them with modern nuclear reactors with modern, I believe it's 3rd and 4th generation safety features. And we also need to make sure that the United States government allows for massive grants to be provided to private institutions that are conducting research on nuclear fusion, because that certainly will be the way forward. And I believe that we need to be proactive in that instance and beat our adversaries in the energy war instead of being reactive and possibly falling behind the curve. That would be my opinion on that. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, I believe we actually have a couple of super chats left before we move on into the live chat segment. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Richard Hawkins, who puts in a generous $20 donation. And thank you very much, Richard, as well. He says sometimes a burger is better than a hot dog.
Oh, I got to thank you so much for the support. And I would agree with you completely. I honestly like hamburgers more than hot dogs. But every once in a while, being entirely honest and unfiltered, I do like a hot dog, like a chili dog here and there. That is really good. But honestly, I usually go with hamburgers. They're just the easier and more convenient option of the two. But still, thank you so much once again for support. And I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again, Richard Hawkins, for the support.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Monsieur Gaston. And he puts in that 10. He said, "Hello, Governor. Any plums for sale?"
Oh, hello there. Would you like a plum? Oh,
my headphones just went out in the left ear. I can't hear.
What the hell do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
Well, you see, my headphones are fancy, so they have transparency mode, so that way I can hear myself talk, so I'm not screaming like a maniac. And whenever it picks up loud sounds, it, like, totally cuts the transparency, like, surround sound out. So it totally cuts it out, and I sound like I'm deaf.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of cool. But, hello, Governor. Would you like to be deaf?
Hello there.
Would you like to be deaf, Governor? Oh,
No,
man. I would like to be...
don't want to be that way.
I would like to be completely tone deaf to my viewers. Aw, man. I'm going to shit on them every day of the week. Aw, man. And then I'm going to complain when they unsubscribe. Aw, man. And then to top it all off, I'm going to blame it on them. Aw, man. I'm so glad we're not a YouTube channel like that. Like, you know, like when you think about it, it's like, that would be sad to be that tone deaf. It's like a modern AAA game studio over there on that channel, Matthew. It's like, are we wrong? No. The consumers are wrong. It's like, how in the world can you even come up with that?
The hot dog man's gonna go home and turn the lights down low. And cry real long and slow.
Watch me. Dude, you thought you could make the stupidest looking thumbnails? Check this out. Oh, yeah. That one. Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
This
Make
is
that face again, buddy. Make it again.
Do it again. Do it again. Oh, my goodness. And the lighting. What the hell was up with that lighting? like, what was that? What was that? Like, but anyways, I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Monsieur Gaston, and allowing us to take a look at the little marmot, Alan the marmot. It's a beautiful marmot. We haven't actually had the marmot up for a couple of days now, so I'm happy that we have it back. And Alan the marmot do be doing his work. He's selling that rock and plum. And one day one day when the Lee Spring Army becomes a big deal and we have multiple millions of subscribers, we are going to pretty much codify that Birmingham will be the capital of the LSA. Sorry for everyone who's from a bigger city, it's going to be Birmingham. But we are going to open up a restaurant called the Plum and Rock or something like that, or a bar called the Plum and Rock specifically for the Lee Spring Army, so y'all can go there and check it out. And it'll be filled with LSA themed stuff. That would be kind of cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. The best I can. And thank you all so much once again for the support and making this channel be possible. And of course, thank you, Monsieur Gaston, as well, for allowing us to see Alan the Marmot. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, I ran a poll here, and if you didn't catch, the poll was designed to basically figure out whether or not you were going to pick a gas-powered car or an electric car, but I did it in a very sneaky way where the options would be so appealing in the gas-powered segment that you'd have to be really dedicated to the battery-powered cars to go with the Tesla. So it looks like only 20% of the audience said they want to go with the Tesla Model S, while everybody else wanted the really fast and really cool gas-powered cars. And I have to say that between the two, I'm going to have to go with the gas-powered all day long. I want the exhaust sound, I want the shifting sound, and you can't get that with the electric. They're trying to put in that fake sound in the electric ones, but it simply doesn't work. It doesn't match.
It just doesn't do it.
And me personally, I would have to go with the M3 because it's a classic. Not the new one, but the old one, because the new one looks like a big fish. But Enforcer, what say you?
Dude, that new one be looking like it's sucking in all the air with that giant-ass grill. It's like, who designed that? But anyways, beyond that, I would have to say, out of all these, I'd probably go with the Chevrolet Corvette C8 as well. But, whoa, do you see that in the chat, Matthew? What the hell? Someone just said T-A-R-D.
Oh, whoa,
you
you can't say that.
What the hell? You can't say that. Only I can. I'm just kidding, but beyond that, I would pick the Corvette. I mean, I just think it's cool looking. I think it's neat. But in the future, I will say this: in the future, there probably will only be electric cars. Now I'm saying that though as like a bit of a caveat. It's kind of how there's no real cars that use leaded gas anymore. They're only collectible cars, and there still is the option to get leaded gas. There's actually a gas station here in Birmingham that sells leaded gas for those collectible cars, but it's not common anymore. That's what electric cars are going to be like compared to internal combustion engines. There will, of course, always be support in the future for internal combustion engines, or they may end up becoming a collectible thing that car collectors get, and then there will be gasoline that's still available for those cars, but there won't really be a lot of them. But electric cars will end up being the cars of the future, and it's just the way of change. It's like how cars replaced the horse originally, and then after time, the internal combustion engine actually ended up replacing all of the different myriad of different ways that cars were propelled back in the day. Because at the very infancy of cars, people don't know this, there was actually a lot of different propulsion methods. There were battery powered cars back in the day. I forgot the name. I think the company was called Edison. Edison cars, I think that's what they were, but they actually were battery powered. Then there was, what were they called, Matthew? They were the steam powered cars. I forgot their name.
The steam powered ones.
Yeah, remember the ones that would have the steam engines that would boil the water and then they would run as a steam engine. I forgot the name of those. But there were steam-powered cars back then as well, and those were actually fairly common and fairly popular up until about the early 30s, I believe. And then there were internal combustion engines, and I believe those were the big three. It was electric, steam-powered, and internal combustion engines. In the end, the internal combustion engine actually ended up winning out over the other two because the technological innovations in those fields were not as big and expansive as the internal combustion engine, and so those ended up winning. But nowadays we see that the electric power car might end up winning in the end, because of certain reasons that we really can't get into on stream. But still, it is kind of the ebb and flow and the change. But with that,
Oh, real quick, by the way, I see a lot of people fawning over the BMW M3. I gotta say, one of my favorite cars of all time is the M3. In fact, one of the first versions of it, the E30, is the coolest one they've ever made, in my opinion. If I could get any of them, I would go for that one. The only problem is that is more expensive than the new ones, which the new ones are crazy priced, and the old ones now even crazier than that. But Enforcer, pull it up real quick and show the people this car. This a BMW M3 E30. It's a piece of history. It's a classic, and it has that old, like, really good German design. Looks so clever.
let's see here. Trying to find one. BMW M3. So sadly I can't find. Okay, so here we go. This one.
Yes, that is it. But I would like it in red, though. But this is it, man. This thing is like class, like pure class right there on that. That thing, one of the best, in my opinion, the best designed, coolest looking M3 of all time is that one right there.
I mean, it does look pretty good. I'm not going to lie. It actually would stand up to the test of time. But here's the thing that I got to say, y'all. My gripe about electric cars, okay? Electric cars are not bound by normal, conventional car design, right? Like, you can design those things to look however the hell you want. Because all of the power plant and all of the storage of its power is actually very low slung. It's literally in the actual chassis of the vehicle. There is no engine bay like there is on a normal internal combustion engine car. So you can design these things to look however the hell you want in the end of the day. Like the Cybertruck, which I've got to admit looks extremely ugly. I'm finally seeing some in real life, and I don't like them. I think they look stupid. I'm sorry if you own one. Like I think they actually look really bad. And there's really no way to explain. I mean, it just is a terrible look. I mean, I don't think anyone could disagree with that, except for the people who own them. And I'm so sorry to the people who own them. But beyond that, with electric cars, you can design them however you want to look. So why not make them look cool? Like, like an old 1970, let me go 1970 Dodge Charger. Like for Dodge, for example. Like, let's say you wanted to really draw in people who wanted a cool looking car. Why not make an electric car that looks like a 1970 Dodge Charger? I mean, there's nothing stopping you. I'm just saying, some people like these, Matthew. Calm down. But some people like these things. If they want one to look like that, why not do it? I mean, why not? You could do something like that. You could make all kinds of old retro car designs that would really draw in a market. Like you and me may not like this car, Matthew, but I know that a lot of people do in the muscle car world. They think that this was a really good looking design. So why not cater to that? Why not make like a retro designed car that is run on electric batteries? I'm sure that would sell to hell and back, instead of making these weird looking kind of like lame. Because I'm not gonna lie, the Tesla
Yeah.
Model
They are,
X.
by the way.
Say what?
They are. The Dodge, I think it's a Dodge Charger or Challenger, is being made electric.
Yeah, but they're not making them look cool, though. You know what I mean? Like, they look like every other generic electric car.
I mean, it looks cool for what it is. I mean, it's based after the Charger or Challenger. I can't remember which one it is. I get those mixed up. Yeah, let's see here what it looks like. Yeah, there it is. I mean, it looks cool for what it is. I mean, it's I'm honestly not a huge fan of Dodge. I kind of hate Dodge, actually. I really don't like Dodge whatsoever. But if for a Dodge, it's not bad.
I don't know, man. I don't really like him either, but this thing looks worse than the 1970 Dodge Charger or Challenger, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't look that good. And that's the thing. Like, they can make these things look cool if they want to, because there's nothing limiting them from doing that anymore. I mean, they don't have, like, this whole entire area in the front hood. There's nothing there. Like, there's nothing in there. It's just another storage compartment. So you could design this however you want it to. And for some reason, they keep on going with goofy-looking designs. Like the electric Mustang, which I hate because it just looks like a Tesla. Look at that. Like, it looks like a Tesla with a Mustang logo slapped on it. It doesn't look good. It looks stupid.
Oh, the Mach-E. Oh, gosh.
I mean, look at that. It doesn't look original. It looks like an Audi Q5, or it looks like a Porsche. What's that Porsche SUV, Matthew? You know the one I'm thinking about.
There's the big one, which is the Cayenne, and there's the mid-size one, which is the Macan.
I think it's the Macan. It's the one that's nearby, if you know what I mean.
It's the Macan then.
Yeah, it looks like a Macan with the Mustang logo slapped on it. It does not look like a Mustang anymore. And like I'm saying, there's nothing limiting the body design anymore at all. It's all empty space really above the wheelbase. So why can't they design them to look cool? I mean, I think that may be one of the biggest drawbacks to the electric car world currently is that they aren't making them anything that people want to buy. Like I don't look at this and go, damn, that actually looks cool. I'd want to get one. Like this Mustang, I mean, that's not bad looking. It doesn't look that bad at all. I mean, I would probably consider getting that. But this, it's like, I don't want that. It doesn't scream Mustang. It screams Tesla ripoff with Mustang logo. I don't like it. It looks lame. And then the Tesla, say what?
I said I agree. Also, real quick, I was watching here. Drop Nation, who's in the chat once again, he's a big fan. They said that they're buying a Porsche Cayman S tomorrow morning. And I was like, "Wow, congratulations!" He said, "That's my first car." I was like, "What the hell?" I was like, "That's your first car?" Just like, man, my first car was a Volkswagen. It was a very fun car. I liked it a lot. It was a 4-cylinder Volkswagen. And it was very fun to drive. I thought it had a lot of power back in the day, but really it only had like I think 180 horsepower or something like that. But I drove it like it was like 400 horsepower. But it was pretty fun. But a Porsche for a first car, that is crazy, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, that is actually really crazy. And man, honestly, man, I like that Volkswagen now that I think back about it. That was actually not a bad car at all.
I liked it. Actually, it drove pretty smooth. Actually, like for like a Volkswagen, it was pretty good. Like I think it was like a GTI Jetta or something like that. It was a used one. I can't remember the year model to be honest. I think it was like a 11 or a 12 or something like that, or maybe a 10. I can't remember what the year model was. It wasn't that old when I got it, but it was sort of like a base model one. But I honestly didn't know much about Volkswagens. It was kind of got for me, like I just kind of like got it. But it was cool though. It drove pretty good.
Yeah, and also, really quickly, I saw someone say, it was Elon Musk in the chat. I don't know. I mean, if he is,
That's a fake one.
oh, wait, really? I was hello, I'm Elon Musk. But beyond that, I mean, like if Elon Musk was really in the chat, I would want him to take a note really quickly. Is don't make them look like this because I think this just looks terrible.
No, I think that looks good. I think that actually looks pretty good. Like the Model X, I think that is, actually looks pretty decent. That one doesn't, but the other one did.
Yeah, but this is what they really look like. It's like, that's it. They look goofy. I mean, like, I think they look bad. Make them look cool. Like, if it's supposed to be a sport car, make the body shape like a sports car. Make it cool. I mean, like, I don't know why everyone's going with this bulbous bubble design these days. It just doesn't look good to me. They all blend into being the same thing. Everything is turning into an SUV now. Like everything. Normal cars are looking like SUVs now. It's like the crab evolution thing where everything eventually evolves back into a crab, but in the car world. And it's like things cannot be SUVs every single time. SUVs are great, but there's got to be variety here. But anyways, with that, I think we've rabbit holed on this long enough. We're turning into Top Gear or the Grand Tour out here. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I see Brownie Mixbro said, still though, Volkswagens are great cars. They are great cars. They're pretty good. They're I think they're known as the people's car. Every time I would drive it, I would always hear like something in the background. I'd be like, what was that? I hear a rattle or something, and I would hear I'd be like, huh? What was that? I'm just hearing stuff. But anyways, our next one here goes to Trister1, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Trister, for your support.
Hey!
He said, Corgi Chewy Fun, live chat question, and thanks, guys.
And thank you so much for the Corgi Chewy Fund. And thank you so much for supporting the live chat question. And of course, no problem at all, Trister1. We are more than happy to run this show. We love running the show, and we wouldn't be anywhere else in the world. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got for a live chat sponsored by Trister1?
So this live chat question goes to Cat, who says, if each time a leader meet Putin, they subsequently attack a Western-aligned neighbor, do you think North Korea will now attack South Korea?
I haven't seen that every country Putin's met with has attacked a Western-aligned neighbor, to be entirely honest, because he met Belarus, and I haven't seen them go to war with anyone, and I haven't seen anything like that, to be entirely honest. So I would say no. I don't think North Korea would be going to war with South Korea anytime soon. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well, and thank you once again for support, Trister1, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Kerry Charlson, who puts in a 7 and says, I'm a fan, and American proven reserves keep increasing every year, and we're nowhere near peak oil.
That is true. That is actually true, Kerry Charlson. We're nowhere near the peak production, which is like it's a strategic decision to decide how much we tap into or don't tap into. That the U.S. government always is trying to get involved in, because the U.S. government is actually very involved with how much oil we produce, because they give out the drilling rights. So they can actually deny drilling rights or give out drilling rights. Which, man, that's got to be a tough world to be in these days, trying to be in the oil business. Because if you're sitting on top of a property that has massive oil reserves, you've got to wait for the federal government to approve drilling rights, which could take forever, depending on what's going on. So that's actually kind of crazy to think about. That's actually fairly regulated by the government, that kind of an industry. But beyond that, we haven't really tapped into much, and there still is a lot of oil left, but eventually it will run out. Or the better way to put it is that it will become scarce enough that the price starts to increase, and that will start to negatively impact the economy. And we want to wean ourselves off of oil, or at least have a very diversified energy grid that isn't massively oil-based, specifically for transportation purposes, when it starts to become scarce. And that's kind of the thing that's making myself personally believe that it would be better to look into things like electrical power sources, making up most of the transportation grid, and then figuring out how to make that extremely cheap and extremely easy to do, which would most likely be with nuclear power. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, Kerry Charlson, and thank you so much once again for support. You're not wrong on that at all. And with that, we are on to the actual final super chat of the segment, and then we're finally going to be moving on into the live chats.
All right, and this one goes to Rad Doctor, who puts in a 2, and he just says very simply, Dodge Viper. And Rad Doctor, I will tell you, I'm not sure if the Enforcer knows much about the Dodge Viper. It's a very cool car, sort of like a unique one-off type vehicle. A very good sounding V10. The exhaust sounded fantastic. I will say, though, I'm not a huge fan of the design of it. The design was a little bit weird, and also it was very dangerous to drive because they're easily able to lose control of the vehicle when you're steering it. And also, if you give it a lot of gas, very easy to lose control is how much torque the engine had. But it's unique. But me personally, not really my style, but it is a historical car. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I haven't really seen the Dodge Viper much. It's all right. I don't know. It doesn't really do it for me, like it's not the greatest looking, I guess, sportsy car that I've seen. Is it a muscle car or a sports car, Matthew?
I would say it's a muscle car. I guess you could call it a sports car, but I would say it's more muscled. It's a ton of torque, and I think it handled okay from what I saw, but it's more like for a straight line, I think.
Interesting. Now, I do like this Bristol Fighter here. That's actually pretty cool looking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all right. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's all right. Let me see here. Dang, I'm not actually seeing a lot that's really like, wow, that's cool. Like, I don't know. I'm hard to impress with cars, though. I find a lot of cars don't really look that good, at least in my opinion. Even older cars, so most of them I'm like, meh, it doesn't really look that great. I don't know. I'm really hard to please with cars, so don't be disappointed in me saying, it's all right, because I'll say that about really everything, to be honest. But not bad. I mean, objectively, not that bad of a car. It's just that it's not my personal kind of a taste. I'm usually, to explain my kind of logic, there are speed limits you can't exceed. So why in the world go for speed? Go for comfort instead. So I'm more on a comfort side of things with cars. And that's why when I look at cars and I go, what is the peak of my kind of a idea of a car? I usually look at Rolls-Royce. Like most people look at Ferrari, most people look at Lamborghini. I'm more of someone who likes Rolls-Royce because Rolls-Royce leans more into the luxury comfort end of cars. Not really speed, not really performance, but more so getting somewhere and really being comfortable doing so. And that's why I'm a big fan of that, because you can get a fast car. You'll never be able to go as fast as the car can go. You'll end up going the speed limit like everyone else. So why be uncomfortable? Be as comfortable as you possibly can. Hell, if you're that rich to be able to afford those kinds of cars, hire a chauffeur and actually get chauffeured around. That would be like the peak of luxury to me. Not a sports car, but more so kind of like a luxury car like that. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Still an interesting idea, though, and I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are now moving on into the live chats, and we're going to try and answer as many of them as we can, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. So with that, we are on to the first one.
All right, and up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream, and tonight it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J., Rumpelstiltskin, and David Millsaps. They said tonight's Morse code reads, Russia is doing so poorly that supply trucks are spontaneously combusting, and long live the LSA, Slava Ukraine, and Slava LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night, and I got to say, thank you all once again for getting that Morse code message correct for 847 days of war. Absolutely impressive and crazy to know that you'll continue to get that right time and time again. And so with that, I hope we addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to JR Does Stuff, who says, any updates about Israel giving Ukraine their Patriot systems that they're taking offline?
Last we heard, they were actually planning on keeping those and demolishing them. That doesn't sound that good, does it? But that's what we heard. So I hate to report that, but it doesn't really seem like Israel is that pro-Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Also, I saw Bug C say Maybach. Oh, man. I'll tell you. Oh, Maybach is actually really good. We actually have a dealership here in Birmingham. Where is it?
Irondale.
Yeah, Irondale. It's somewhere. Hang on. Let me think. Where the hell is it? Let me put 2 and 2 together. So it's somewhere up here. Yeah, here we go. This Mercedes building. They have a Maybach out there. Well, they had a Maybach like 6 months ago, I think. And we went out there and we actually test drove it. You know, like we had no actual premise of buying this thing. It's like over $250,000. No way in hell you'd be able to afford it. No way in the hell we'd especially be able to afford it. But we went and test drove it anyways. And oh my god, was it so freaking nice. Like it was the kind of luxury thing where it's like, okay, like if I ever became like a multi-millionaire or a billionaire overnight, this would be the car, and I'd hire a chauffeur for it so I could sit in the back, because they made the back, because Maybachs are made specifically for chauffeuring. So the back is made to be luxurious. The front's more so utilitarian, but the back of the car was insane. It was so nice. I was blown away. I was like, now this is what a car should be. Like, this is what it really is, because it, like, you know, the car is nothing more than an evolution of the coach. The stagecoach, or whatever you want to call it, the carriage, whatever. And at the end of the day, you never actually drove the coach, you rode in it. That's what it's supposed to be. And that's what I think the luxury cars, or the peak of cars, is supposed to be, is that you're supposed to be driven around and ride in the back in comfort and luxury. That's what I think the cars really are in my concept. You know, the whole sports car thing kind of came around as a part of car culture, but I believe in the traditional way that cars were supposed to be enjoyed, riding in the back and having a driver. And so with that, I hope that
I like cars that have very heavy steering. I've never had a manual, but I would like one. I used to have a motorcycle though, so manual's fun. But I like cars that are more attached to the road, like a louder engine. You know, it feels like it's more direct steering. Real basic, like e-brake. All the dials are analog instead of digital. I just like a real basic car that has a good engine and it's fun to drive and also makes good noise. I don't like all this like modern stuff that they have in these new sports cars and stuff like that, where it literally like is like electronic nannies in the car that will not let you turn off traction control and all this other stuff. And also the e-brake is electronic. So I don't want an electronic e-brake. I want the wire like e-brake, like the one you can yank if you want to yank it for whatever reason. You might be yanking the e-brake while you're driving. I don't know, but that's what I like. I like those type of vehicles. Like comfort, nothing wrong with that, but I like a fun car.
I just like getting from point A to point B. Really different mindsets here with Matthew and me, at least on cars. But I'm one who likes to get from point A to point B in comfort, and that means luxury cars would be my route. Matthew's route would be like getting towards, I think, Ferrari and Lamborghini, although everyone who really knows anything doesn't really like Ferrari because it's goofy.
Nah, I wouldn't like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, to be honest with you. Too kind of, honestly, like, this might be a hot take, kind of a little too douchey, to be straight up honest with you. Like, there are some, I've seen like maybe 1 or 2 people that has a Ferrari or something like that that's not, you know, honestly a douchebag. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, with that, we'll leave that there.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, with that, we'll leave that there just for everyone to sit on and marinate on. And with that, we are on to the next one.
But anyways, our next one here, this goes to Steve Ehrlich, who says, Matt, is there a precedent for an all-out total assault by Russia, like a last gasp, or perhaps the Kharkiv offensive was meant to be that?
I think the Kharkiv offensive is kind of inadvertently ended up being a last gasp for the Russians. It was meant to achieve a lot and achieved really nothing in the end. And so I would say that that really was, whether they meant it or not, their last gasp of any major offensive action. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I see people laughing at the e-brake comment. I don't know why you'd be yanking an e-brake while you're driving. Who knows why you'd be doing that? I don't advocate it. It sounds unsafe. It sounds like it could send the car sideways, which could be dangerous. But anyways, our next one here goes to O-Tubes. It says, I heard in some news online that China may not be keen on the idea of Putin visiting chubby cheeks. Your thoughts on this?
I have heard that as well. I don't really think they care too much, because as long as North Korea exists to create a buffer zone in between China and the West on a land border, that's all that China really cares about. So beyond that, I don't really know if they would care too much. Maybe they made one statement here or there about it, but it probably wasn't anything that big of a concern to the Chinese in reality. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Andreas Scout, who says, will the West finally start sanctioning the sons and daughters and family of the Russian oligarchs living in the West, because Solyev's family lives in the U.S.?
I'm not really sure if they ever will, because that seems a bit like a generational thing, like a Songbun kind of a thing in Korea, where it's like, oh, your parents did something? Shame on you, shame on family, and then you get them for the next 3 generations. I don't really think that's fair, to be quite honest. Because, yeah, their family may be over there, and they may be related to someone who is the pro-Russian or, part of an anti-Western front. But it seems that it would be a little bit unfair to take that out on their children, possibly, who may have nothing to do with that, or may completely disagree with it, or may be completely removed from their parents. So I would say generally I would not be a big fan of that, because then we start getting into passing things down through the family as punishment, and that seems unfair to me. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to John Underwood, who says, I heard you report that the Freedom of Russia Corps went into Russia, and when did they withdraw, or are they still there?
They actually withdrew an incredibly long time ago. I wouldn't be able to give you a time frame for it anymore because I forgot when, but it was at least over a month and a half ago. They ended up sustaining some pretty decent losses and did not achieve any of their objectives, according to the Free Russian Army itself. So from what we understand, it didn't go that well, and so they've withdrawn, and I believe that now they are not really having any big ambitions of returning back into Russia anytime soon, from what I understand. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Vlogger, who says, now that Russia has signed an agreement with North Korea, will North Korea take this opportunity to attack South Korea?
No, because it actually doesn't change their offensive posturing at all, because it's a defensive pact, meaning that they'll only get benefits if they are attacked, not if they attack someone else. So this doesn't really change the strategic positioning in between North Korea and South Korea. It just changes the defensive position of North Korea, which is really unchanging, to be honest. And so this is more of a symbolic thing than a realistic kind of a defensive pact. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person through in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Magic Forest. Magic Forest, it could be the Red Forest. But anyways, they said, if Putin is begging/buying, etc., from foreign governments, does this mean he intends to continue this war even though he's getting his ass beat?
Good question. Good question. I think it does mean that he is trying to continue this war, or it may be that he knows that the war is going to be coming to an end quickly, and so he's trying to find ways to prolong the war, so that way it'll end a little bit further out from now. Because there's no way for the Russians, without Chinese support, really, to be quite honest, there's really no way for them to continue on this war for much longer. So really, all of these allies that are giving them like weapons support or any kind of material support, they're only prolonging the inevitable. But the end of the war still will be coming, probably by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. Absolutely crazy. And tonight at the peak, there was 9.9 thousand people here. And over the course of this stream, 71,233 people have watched this stream. We are entirely honored to be able to cover the news for each and every single one of y'all. It is something that we can't even put into words how happy we are and how much we love doing this. And we thank you all so much once again for joining us and enjoying the stream and helping it to be possible by hitting the like button and just watching it in general. And to all of our super chatters tonight who supported the channel, we thank y'all greatly. Y'all are the only thing that helps this channel to stay afloat and helps us to be able to do this for a living. And we cannot thank y'all enough for being a part of that. And of course, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. The Leaf Spring Army will never die.
And with that, good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow, maybe on the short war summary if there's enough news to cover, and definitely tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the nightly war news stream. But with that, thank you all for another great stream. Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and we'll see you all tomorrow. And good night.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.